In a world where strength is everything, one child is destined to shatter every record: Han Sung. He was a marvel from the moment he was born, a miracle so profound his very existence defied logic. By age 8, he was already a prodigy, weaving elemental spells as naturally as breathing. This terrifying talent sent him directly into the front lines of war by age 10, where he crushed entire armies like insects, becoming a legend of terror. While his legend grew, a young noblewoman named Charlotte Orlhart arrived at House Saxon, seeking sanctuary under the rule of Alan Saxon, the continent's greatest necromancer and leader of the Black Tower. But for Charlotte, being forced to seek shelter as a lowly servant is a crushing humiliation. For a woman of her noble blood who refuses to bow to a mere child, driven by pride, Charlotte challenges the boy to a duel, determined to prove her superiority with her sword. But despite her lineage and the use of aura, she cannot best Han Sung, who fights with nothing but a simple blade. Crushed by defeat, the girl weeps for her lost family, but Han Sung offers a way forward, a chance for more. He promises to make her the most powerful warrior if she swears her service to House Saxon, supporting her revenge. Can she accept such a deal, or will Han Sung's promises prove hollow? To understand this world, we must return to where it all began for the hero, Han Sung. As he readies his weapon, Han Sung prepares for a war that has pushed humanity to the brink. Han Sung has been fighting monsters for decades. After endless deadly battles, only a handful of humans have survived, and his goal is finally within reach. A magic circle erupts beneath his feet, pulling him into a void before he can even react. As he vanishes from his own world, a mysterious voice echoes, commanding him to answer a call. Golden lines wrap around his neck, and as his vision steadies, he finds himself trapped in an unknown place. He is surrounded by silent, hooded figures and discovers glowing magical shackles bound to his arms. Suddenly, an elderly man approaches, lowering his hood to welcome the hero from another world. Despite the suddenness, the man claims they need Han Sung to defeat the Demon King and save this world. Desperate and confused, Han Sung demands to know where he is, shouting that he belongs in the middle of a battle in Korea. To silence him, the old man casts a spell that triggers a binding oath, causing Han Sung to scream in excruciating pain. The magic won't stop unless, but for now, the magic is unbearable. Burning with agony and tears, Han Sung realizes he has no choice but to endure. The bald man tosses him a sword, repeating the grim mandate: defeat the Demon King and save the Empire. He promises a way home if only... He promises that if Han Sung succeeds, he will finally be sent back to his own world. Under the watchful, gleaming eyes of hooded figures, Han Sung weighs his options and decides to accept the impossible task. He is now a summoned hero, a tool for an empire. For years, he fights without rest, carrying the weight of the entire world on his shoulders. He slaughters endless enemies through a decade of non-stop expeditions, his life consumed by war. Han Sung sacrificed his entire youth to defeat the Demon King of Valor, but the mission's end brings no peace. Instead, the old man delivers a new order, ignoring Han Sung's protests of exhaustion. The Empire's greed knows no bounds. They demand the elimination of all who oppose their unification. A wanted poster appears, targeting a warrior from the Night Kingdom of Teutonia. He is marked for death. Forced into service like a dog on a leash, Han Sung enters another bloody skirmish, wondering if there will ever be an end to this cycle. After a fierce exchange, Han Sung lands a strike on Bottle, leaving the man wounded and bitter. Bottle warns him not to apologize for the blow, for Han Sung too will soon be discarded by the Empire. Han Sung thought his mission was over, and he could finally go home, but the binding threads around his neck suddenly jerked him forward. Before he could react, a blade was driven deep into his stomach. The attacker is Count Brandenburg, a grand general and sacred knight who begins to treat his service like nothing more than a tool. Han Sung realizes the brutal truth: the Empire never intended for their hunting dog to ever return home. The Count delivers more strikes, cold and indifferent, noting that a dog only knows how to bite. Collapsing to the ground, Han Sung feels his life slipping away. He knew this betrayal was coming, and as his vision fades, he makes a final blood-soaked promise. He will never forget this humiliation, and he will make this empire pay with total annihilation. As one life ends on that dark night, another is just beginning. As a duchess approaches her newborn child, the infant begins to think, and as memories of his past life flood back, he realizes he is no longer the man he once was. He sees the woman before him and remembers the man standing beside her, the continent's greatest necromancer. Han Sung regains memories. He has opened his eyes in Necropolis, the Empire's forbidden magic headquarters, where the Black Tower stands. Before his death, Han Sung had hidden a resurrection stone, but his new body was a complete gamble. He struck gold, reborn as the firstborn son of House Saxon, one of the Empire's most powerful noble families. His new purpose is crystal clear: master necromancy, and slaughter every man who betrayed him. But while he plans his revenge, Duke Saxon grows concerned that the newborn won't cry. Han Sung, of course, is far too composed to let a mere midwife's pat on his bottom satisfy his dignity. The child's silence leads the parents to assume he simply possesses the legendary Saxon strength, so Elena, the Duke's wife, asks to hold him. Han Sung braces for more humiliation, but Elena's touch is surprisingly gentle. As she strokes his skin, he searches his mind for a feeling that isn't pain or battle wounds, finding only a warmth he hasn't known in decades. Overwhelmed by this sudden tenderness, the former hero finally breaks, crying with the pure soul of a newborn baby. 8 years pass in the blink of an eye, and the Saxon household has grown accustomed to their young son's quiet nature. While Alan Saxon notes that Han Sung has begun showing an interest in magic, Elena remains wary of his potential. She turns to her husband to remind him of his promise that he would never teach the boy the dark art of necromancy. Alan confirms his vow, allowing her a brief moment of peace. However, that peace is shattered by a sudden crash coming from the study. The couple rushes in to find Han Sung on the floor, trapped in the glow of a mysterious magic circle. Elena rushes to the boy with concern, but Han Sung quickly tries to brush off the incident. Instead, Alan Saxon focuses his senses. The Duke realizes with awe that Han Sung has already learned to release mana within his own body. It is a feat impossible for a typical 8-year-old. Han Sung frantically tries to explain the accident, but his father doesn't look suspicious. He looks proud. Alan Saxon ruffles Han Sung's hair, admitting his only regret is that he cannot yet teach his son the ways of necromancy. Elena smiles, instructing, once the boy is gone, Alan calls to his wife, already dreaming up a special birthday gift. The territory is alive with life. While the guests are eager to see the birthday boy, Han Sung remains isolated in a hall on the second floor. He finds the sudden attention exhausting, especially after a lifetime of being treated with indifference, and he still can't shake the worry from his recent magical accident. Han Sung's mana remains volatile, a lingering echo of his past life that hints at a terrifying natural talent for necromancy. To master this power, he decides his best birthday gift would be his father's mentorship, but his mother, Elena, arrives with an unexpected guest trailing behind her. Han Sung stares at the mysterious stranger, sensing a powerful presence. The visitor is an elder from the Blue Magic Tower. Sephia, a wise elf and master of water magic, has arrived to serve as his new teacher. This is the true gift, Sephia herself, tasked with teaching him her art. The message is clear. Elena wants him to master defense and interruption, keeping him far away from the dark magic that flows through him with a friendly smile. Sephia asks to speak with Han Sung alone. The two step aside, where the elf reveals she knows his parents' restrictions and the boy's true interests. Because of this oath, Alan promised not to pass his dark legacy to his son to win over Elena. Generation. In fact, on their wedding day, even the elders of the Black Tower traded their dark robes for white. Such a sacred vow makes gaining Lady Elena's trust a monumental challenge for the Duke. Sephia smiles, inviting the young boy to accept her teachings. However, Han Sung wonders if an elf who values nature's laws cannot accept the use of dark magic. Sephia laughs, noting that even priests who resurrect the dead defy nature. To her, necromancy is just another tool, making her a far better mentor than he had first imagined. Eager to begin, she aims to turn the small fragment of mana he recently formed into a complete functional circle. She instructs him to place a hand over his heart and focus. Handling raw mana is a feat nearly impossible for anyone but dragons, necessitating a steady mana circle to filter the energy. To process this immense power, a circle must spin constantly around the heart. Han Sung begins mentally tracing the mana's path as it flows toward his chest. Han Sung follows Sephia's every instruction, but she warns him to take things slowly. She explains that mastering mana normally takes a month, and then Han Sung opens his palm to reveal the energy he has already conjured, asking if he succeeded. Sephia freezes. Stunned that a child could form a stable mana circle in mere minutes. He eyes his new natural ability, whereas his previous life required complex engravings to channel power. This new body absorbs it effortlessly. He focuses his mind. As his concentration peaks, a sharp projectile forms between his hands, defying all logic. Sephia can only watch in disbelief as the magic maintains its shape. Han Sung aims his mana projectile at a tree, and it explodes into splinters. The magic slices through the wood with a surgical precision, far beyond any 8-year-old's capability. Sephia stares in shock at the devastation her student has caused. Han Sung simply offers a bright, innocent smile, but Sephia can only wonder, just what kind of monster is this child? She remains frozen, unable to process the terrifying talent she just witnessed. The technique was basic, Yet the perfection Han Sung displayed was anything but. He only looks worried, as if he's done something wrong. Sifia offers a calm smile to soothe him, hiding the truth of her racing thoughts. Rotation, acceleration, and compression, the three core formulas that serve as the gold standard of magic for an 8-year-old child to execute. Compression. To master all three with such precision, this boy must be something far beyond a normal child. Sifia waves it off, but she finally understands why the Black Archmage held so many regrets. Later she meets with Saxon and Alan to discuss the boy. Saxon is clearly unhappy and demands to know why she cannot continue teaching him. Sifia remains calm as she explains. The moment the young master reached the first circle, unleashed an attack spell with a perfect form that no child his age should possess. It was a display of raw, calculated power. The boy's talent is undeniable. Sifia, an elder of the Blue Magic Tower, takes a sip of tea, her gaze unsettled by the boy's unnatural growth. Therefore, she refuses to teach him, simply because she realizes the young master is already chasing a much darker goal. And that goal is the forbidden dark magic of the Black Archmage. Han Sung stands behind the door, certain the conversation is about him. He never expected his first spell to stir such intense suspicion in a master like Sifia. Han Sung realizes he must hide his true capabilities to avoid further scrutiny. Han Sung's train of thought is broken by his uncle Helmut, a knight who arrives to greet him. Han Sung quickly brushes off the interruption, asking after his uncle's well-being. Helmut pulls him into a warm hug, explaining that he's been busy protecting the Dukedom from the many monsters that, infesting the region in this world, dungeons and monsters are a constant lethal threat. Since the era of the Demon King, the damage has been immeasurable, leaving the Saxon territory burdened with the grim task of clearing the infestation. The irony is that the dukedom's struggle is partly due to Han Sung himself. In his previous life, Han Sung was actually the hero who slew the Demon King, earning the Duke was granted these dangerous lands to manage. Han Sung asks his uncle to be careful and stay safe. The moment is interrupted by the Duke, who notes that Helmut worked especially hard this time. Then, Elena appears, offering a warm smile as she congratulates Han Sung on his magical progress. Elena is overjoyed by her son's progress, and Alan offers to grant him anything he desires, prompting Han Sung to weigh his options with a hand to his chin. Learning necromancy is far too dangerous for a child, so he chooses a safer request, a little sister. The unexpected demand leaves his parents frozen in shock. Helmut struggles not to laugh at the awkward scene, while the Duke solemnly promises to look into it. Retiring to bed, Han Sung knows he must maintain his facade of innocence to hide his true nature. Exhausted from his magical exertions, he quickly drifts into sleep. The peace of sleep is shattered by nightmares, where the cold voice of Count Brandenburg reminds him that it has been a while since they last met. The man violently grabs him by the hair, mocking his new life, his comfort, and his family. He tells him not to. He tells him not to think of revenge. He warns that the Empire will eventually make him disappear entirely. Han Sung jolts awake, gasping from a sudden, crushing pain in his chest. It's mana reflux, a dangerous instability caused by his surging power. Driven by a growing rage against the Empire, he seeks fresh air to calm himself, but the more he walks, the worse the pain becomes. Sifia finds him along the way and immediately recognizes the mana reflux, a symptom of the immense talent swelling within the boy. She places a hand on his chest to ease the pain, fearing that if his power is fueled by malice, it could become something irreversible. Fortunately, the reflux subsides. Sifia turns to the boy. She believes magic is a mirror of the heart, and Han Sung's dangerous potential requires her guidance to ensure that heart stays steady. This is why she is determined to help him, handing him a book on necromancy. Smiling, she calls their meeting a stroke of fate and wishes him a happy birthday. Han Sung responds with a desperate hug. A few days pass. The master and student travel toward the north,
watching a small rabbit in the distance.
Guided by Sifia's advice to hunt like his father, Han Sung gathers mana, while a rabbit watches, unaware of the magic circle forming in his palm. The mana flares like a sharp projectile and strikes the creature with a deafening crack. Sifia watches his steady hands and explains that magic is a mirror of the heart, materializing what is held within the caster's mind.
She tells him that even spell names are just tools to shape the imagination. As he listens, she explains how different towers use magic to reflect their ideologies of power and harmony. The spells of each tower are built entirely upon these philosophies. Knowing he is too young for such depth, she quickly pivots to a practical lesson. She chooses the most fundamental form of necromancy, zombification. A purple energy wraps the dead rabbit as the spell uses mana to reanimate the corpse, allowing the caster to control it through threads of mana. The mana threads control the corpse like a puppet's limbs, and with Han Sung's progress, Sifia decides he is ready for the next level. To test his limit,
Han Sung focuses every ounce of his will on conjuring an out, and ice takes over the area. The rabbit rises, encased in the frost, as Sephia asks him to test its resistance. Han Sung watches intently, anticipating the impact of the coming spell. Sephia casts the spell, sending the rabbit into the air, though the ice armor stays intact on its body. Han Sung shouts excitedly because he managed to block her attack. Satisfied, Sephia praises her, blocking her attack. Sephia smiles at her student, but then she notices he has a request. Stealing his resolve, Han Sung looks Sephia in the eye and asks her to teach him water magic as well. Sephia's calm expression remains, but she firmly denies the request, explaining that his recent feat was already a fundamental application of water magic, a complex art requiring a level of dimensional understanding far beyond his current training. Sephia warns that even basic magic is taxing enough for a novice, and attempting to master two elements simultaneously is for someone his age. Han Sung looks down and murmurs that they should find a way to. Sephia tries to explain her reasoning, but ultimately decides to end the lesson there. Driven by a desperate need to prove his capability, Han Sung spends the night studying alone, appearing the next day exhausted and hollow-eyed. He ignores Sephia's warnings and conjures a purple magic circle, immediately reviving a rabbit, wrapped in ice armor, to demonstrate his newfound control. Sephia watches in shock as the mastered techniques suddenly crack and explode. The rabbit remains standing, leaving the elf master stunned by the chaos. The magic holds, but the rabbit's belly begins to swell unnaturally. A dark purple sphere erupts from within its small body, causing it to convulse violently. Suddenly, the animal explodes into a storm of gore and ice. Shards of frozen flesh strike Sephia's defensive field with lethal force. Sephia stares at her student, completely stunned by the carnage. Han Sung remains calm, explaining that it was a fusion of water and dark magic. He then looks her in the eye and asks if he has finally earned the title of a dual mage. The training ground lies littered with deadly fragments. Sephia can only watch, wide-eyed, at the unprecedented devastation. The combination of ice and explosion created a carnage far beyond either technique alone, turning shards of ice and bone into deadly blades. It is a technique designed for one purpose: to kill on a battlefield. As the elf watches, she wonders what kind of darkness resides within the heart of this child. Han Sung watches Sephia, searching her face for any sign of truth, when Uncle Helmut appears on horseback, waving to the pair. He brings news from the Black Cavalry. This elite unit of House Saxon dominates battlefields with aura-wrapped lances, and Helmut is among the continent's legendary 7 swords. Despite the danger, Han Sung smiles, asking if his uncle has forgotten his promise. The boy's uncle simply laughs at the request. Helmut laughs, warning the boy that the cold is setting in, and the three of them conclude their day. Later that night, Sephia meets with Elena and the Duke. The atmosphere shifts as Sephia reveals Han Sung has already mastered the first circle of necromancy alongside water magic. Master Han Sung has already mastered the first circle of necromancy alongside water magic. The Duke is stunned that the training has deviated from their original agreement, but Sephia stands her ground. Sephia is a teacher who follows her students' lead, knowing water magic is only one part of the boy's hunger. Elena says she understands his desire, but she asks the elf to continue teaching him the ways of water. Sephia agrees, hoping to blend into their world. As she heads for the door, Sephia pauses to apologize to Elena for breaking her oath to the Black Duke. Elena replies, "A dual mage at only 8 years old is a phenomenon that defies all logic. Such a terrifying talent suggests a future that, as a mage of his caliber, he would surely change everything." Alan, seeking a powerful disciple, asks Elena for forgiveness for the path they are taking. Even she admits that necromancy is still seen as a taboo, magic so closely tied to death that she once tried to stop it. But now, she asks her husband to train their son until he is strong enough to silence every critic. The tension breaks as the couple shares a tender moment, lightening the heavy mood. With a smile, the Duke vows to bet everything on raising his son to greatness. This marks the start of Han Sung's first official day of necromancy training. However, Alan stands before his son, looking disappointed. He has heard rumors of Han Sung reanimating things without understanding the mechanics, a fact the boy keeps to himself, knowing his own teacher was the cause. Deep in the castle's basement workshop, the Black Tower's leader delivers a stern warning. As his disciple, Han Sung must never use such mediocre necromancy. To master the dark arts, Han Sung begins by memorizing the anatomy of every living creature. Days of intense study reveal secrets that only doctors in his previous life could ever hope to know. Once he has mastered every detail, Alan says it is finally time for a real lesson, leaving Han Sung staring in shock at the goblin corpse resting on the table. Alan explains that a master can turn a mere soldier into a death knight, but asks how Han Sung intends to control it. Sweat beads on the boy's brow as he realizes a bipedal body is far more complex than a simple rabbit. Attempting to move the goblin's hand feels like wrestling with a tangled, complicated puppet. By accidentally accelerating rigor mortis to boost its defense, he has made the corpse far too stiff to move. Alan places a hand on Han Sung's shoulder, acknowledging that his attempt to harden the corpse was wise, but also realizes that a surge of purple energy begins to radiate from him. The goblin rises with perfect precision, and then its ribcage begins to contort. Alan explains that once you understand a target's structure, you can manipulate it to serve your own will. Han Sung watches the display in complete awe. After ending the spell, the Duke declares this to be the foundation of dark magic. Eager to learn more, Han Sung asks about the philosophy of the Black Tower. The philosophy of the Black Tower. A small smile touches the Duke's lips at his son's sudden hunger for knowledge. He raises his hand, preparing to reveal a profound truth, that reality is always found within death. Every necromancer must master this truth to truly command the dark. But those words stir something deep within him. Memories of his past life as a knight flood back, bringing images of a sword stained by the lives he took, each strike heavy with pain. Lost in the trauma of a killer's life, Han Sung turns pale as his father notices his distress. Even so, he forces a mask of calm over his face, claiming he is fine. As his magical aptitude grows, dark rumors spread across the empire that the Duke is training his son in the ways of necromancy. Because of this scandal, the empire's eyes follow the boy closely. Yet Han Sung never stops training, honing his sword techniques relentlessly under the guidance of Helmut. The boy meets every strike with fierce intensity, while Helmut watches on with a smile. With every exchange, Han Sung's reflexes become sharper. Suddenly, Helmut raises his sword and delivers a strike that is more serious, forcing Han Sung to dodge it. Without hesitation, Han Sung counters with enough precision to knock the weapon right out of Helmut's hands, sending the sword flying into the ground between them. Helmut laughs, genuinely impressed. "That was incredible," he says. But Han Sung insists his uncle went easy on him, noting that a true knight wouldn't have dropped his weapon so easily. Helmut explains. He was using practical fencing, and in a real fight, a lethal blow would have killed an ordinary person. He admits Han Sung's skill is so exceptional, it's almost a shame he chose magic, noting that mages typically rely on guards and defensive magic. He warns that there is no need to push himself this hard, as overdoing it could cause permanent injuries. Han Sung, however, insists he has a reason for dedicating himself to the blade. It would be pathetic if the Duke's son had to depend on nothing but guards and magic shields. Helmut's eyes light up, and he places a hand on the boy's head, calling it a splendid answer and promising that he would. It's rare to find a son like him. The moment is interrupted by Elena, the Duke's wife, who arrives to see how hard her son is working. But she brings news instead. She asks if Han Sung remembers the birthday present he once asked for a little sister. Han Sung's eyes widen as Elena explains he must take good care of her. 10 months pass, and the family gathers to welcome the new life into their home. As Han Sung holds the newborn, he studies her tiny face with intense attention. She had cried for her father, but in her brother's arms. She remains perfectly calm. When asked for his thoughts, Han Sung notes how she feels incredibly heavy despite being so light. The Duke smiles, noting that she carries the weight of life, and warns Han Sung never to forget that responsibility. Shifting focus back to the present, Elena reminds them that Sophia is waiting. The Master of Water Magic is ready to begin today's practical lesson, and Han Sung is far too excited to hold back. Meanwhile, Han Sung decides to stop holding back and lets his magic flow freely. Sophia watches with a curious smile as the boy launches an ice projectile toward her. But his opening move is far too slow, and Sophia deflects it with ease, prompting her to taunt him for being too gentle. Han Sung refuses to back down, his gaze hardening. Sophia doesn't wait for his response, launching a swift counterattack and commanding him to defend himself. Han Sung's eyes widen in shock. The ice armor shatters, but Han Sung's quick thinking prevented a serious injury. Sophia observes his performance closely. After acknowledging his effort, she tells him to try again, prompting Han Sung to build upon the again. A massive crystalline barrier erupts around him, leaving Sophia stunned by its sheer scale. He has reinforced the molecular bonds of the ice, making it as dense as steel. As Sophia approaches the frozen surface to question his sudden defensive maneuver, a sound like a glacial explosion echoes nearby. The air vibrates with the precursor to a massive blast. Inside the barrier, Han Sung is locked in total focus until he commands the detonation. A blinding light begins to build within the structure. Sophia's eyes go wide as the explosion prepares to erupt before she can react. Shards of ice launch toward her like a devastating volley as the barrier shatters. Han Sung realizes he has finally succeeded. The technique was a brutal combination of magic, an ice barrier reinforced multiple times with a built-in explosive effect. It was practically a grenade. He was certain Sephia couldn't dodge it, but then he froze. A riddled, dying Sephia stood right in front of him, only for the real Sephia to step out from behind the decoy, completely unharmed. The target was nothing more than an illusion. With a snap of her fingers, she dissolved the fake and admitted his skill was impressive. Even as a first circle mage, she might have been truly hurt by that strike. Sephia smiled, clearly proud of her student. She crouched down to his level, noting that the attack proved he trusted her enough to show his true strength, and as his master, she couldn't be happier. Sephia praises the powerful formula Han Sung crafted, though he humbly attributes the success to her guidance. She watches him with a proud smile, marveling at how rapidly her disciple is growing. Later, Sephia meets with House Saxon to discuss their recent training sessions. When Alan asks about her bruised jaw, the elf explains it was a mere casualty of their spirited lessons. Alan smiles at their chaos, but Sephia maintains that teaching Han Sung is her greatest joy. However, the lighthearted moment shifts as Alan introduces a grim request. An orc horde has crossed the mountains and invaded the territory, creating a crisis that no small cavalry can contain. The weight of the news sends a sudden chill through Sephia's heart. She fears they will send Han Sung to the front lines, but Alan quickly denies it, refusing to send a boy or his own son into such carnage. However, he acknowledges that the Saxon family must still answer for the blood that is about to be spilled. As the orc invasion looms over their territory, Alan recognizes that Han Sung is no ordinary child. He asks Sephia for her suggestion, considering that lending his son an artifact might be the only way to help him control his burgeoning power. But these artifacts are dangerous. They demand immense talent and can consume the user's very life. The more power an item holds, the harder it is to master, and for the Saxon family, the risk of death is a constant weight they have carried for generations. As the eldest son, Han Sung must prepare for the coming war. The boy is stunned to learn he will join the subjugation of the orc horde, realizing his training is shifting from theory to real battle. To prepare, Alan leads the boy toward a massive, imposing door. Han Sung must learn to master the legendary shadow power of the Saxon lineage. Stepping inside, Han Sung is met with an enormous chamber filled with the Demon King's legacy. These are no ordinary items, but relics pulsing with overwhelming magical power. He has been warned that the stronger the artifact, the more dangerous it can be. However, the adults realize too late that Han Sung has already wandered off to explore the stockpile alone. As he wanders, he searches for something that might suit him. Suddenly, a sinister voice rises from a shield, sensing the hatred and pain in his heart. The dark magic artifacts begin speaking all at once, reacting to the fury inside him. Yet, none of these relics feel powerful enough for his needs. That is, until he makes his move. Deep in the room, Han Sung discovers a cloak that looks as if it appeared out of thin air. It is the Shadow Cloak, a high-level artifact once belonging to a demon army captain from his past life. Without a second thought, Han Sung reaches for the power just as Alan and Sephia rush into the corridor, calling his name in concern. But they are too late. The cloak swallows him whole, dragging Han Sung into a dark inner space where a voice echoes with endless hunger. This is no ordinary magic. It is a relic that allows users to command shadows as if they were living creatures. To master it, however, Han Sung must subjugate the sentient entity dwelling within a feat that looks increasingly impossible as sweat beads on his brow. Outside, a massive purple aura erupts where the cloak had been, and Sephia watches with growing dread as the shadows threaten to consume him. If he isn't pulled out soon, the darkness will be his grave. Suddenly, a blinding light pierces the room, and Han Sung emerges, completely unscathed. Sephia rushes to him in a panic, but the boy simply claims he felt nothing more than a slight tingling. Alan can only stare in disbelief, wondering how such a powerful artifact could be mastered so effortlessly by a mere child. With eyes gleaming with newfound strength, Han Sung turns to his father with a request. He wants to try one more artifact. Though caught off guard by his son's sudden hunger for power, Alan grants him permission, leading to days of intensive exploration in the stockpile. A few days later, Han Sung arrives to train with his uncle, wearing the Shadow Cloak. Even the seasoned knight Helmut can barely hide his shock at seeing the boy draped in such a legendary relic. Helmut asks if he is alright, knowing how difficult these artifacts are to
control, but Han Sung claims it only feels like a slight itch. It's as if the cloak
simply chose him as a friend, leaving a dense black aura pulsing beneath his feet. Han Sung expresses his gratitude and requests a real duel for combat training. Eager to test the boy, Helmut adopts a battle stance, promising to show his full strength for the young master. Suddenly, the pressure becomes overwhelming as Han Sung feels the massive aura of one of the continent's 7 swordsmen. Helmut smiles and tells him not to be intimidated, offering to use only swordsmanship without his aura. The restraint irritates Han Sung. To him, a true knight fights with everything he has. The goal of this duel is simple. Han Sung must master the Shadow Cloak through relentless practice, because if he fails to control its power, the artifact's true potential may remain a mystery forever. Han Sung extends his arms, firing a burst of shadow blades that Helmut reacts to instantly, delivering a strike that shatters the entire attack on impact alone. Han Sung is left speechless by the sheer power of a strike that uses no aura. Helmut laughs, praising the effort, and moves forward to press the advantage. Han Sung falls back, barely dodging a fast strike from the veteran knight. Helmut watches the boy's every move closely. Fascinated by how the black aura can create traps, Helmut leaps to bring a direct strike down on Han Sung. Han Sung extends his hands, blocking with visible effort as the shadow energy flares. The impact sends him sliding back, but the black aura holds. Helmut frowns, impressed that a single strike from him was strong enough to shatter ordinary swords. Recognizing the strength of the high-level artifact, Helmut vows to give everything he can for 10 more strikes. Once the training concludes, the observing knights are stunned. No one has ever lasted more than 2 exchanges against their captain. Even as a young boy, Han Sung possesses a presence as steady as an immovable mountain. Days later, the morning of his departure arrives. Alina struggles to hide her dread, unable to find peace while sending her son towards such danger. Han Sung tries to calm her. He promises that Helmut and his father will protect him, but his true purpose is deeper. He wants to inherit the Dukedom. He wants to be strong enough to protect his family, especially his mother and his sister Lise. Moved to tears, Elena accepts his resolve. She only begs that he stays safe. Han Sung mounts his horse with a promise to return. At the forward base, Helmut leads the massive knight formation. Alan turns to his son and instructs him to lead the march, as tells him that the Black Cavalry will one day belong to him. Han Sung accepts this weight, knowing these knights will eventually be his, that it is time to move out. The knights raise their weapons in a roar of pride to defend House Saxon, swearing to follow their young masters. They will follow the young master's orders, riding at a full gallop toward the battlefield with 250 knights. Across the Saxon River, a horde of 1,000 hungry orcs surges forward, desperate to escape the biting cold. The only way to cross the deep waters quickly is through magic, and the army needs everyone to fall back. Safia steps forward to cast the spell, announcing an ice bridge that will allow the army to cross. Han Sung watches, knowing the heavy toll such magic must take on a pacifist like her. With a massive surge of power, Safia raises a crystalline bridge strong enough to support the entire cavalry. As the path opens, the elf offers her support for the Duke's victory, while Alan gives his customary thanks. Han Sung bids his master farewell, leaving Safia with a sudden, unsettling feeling in her heart. Her eyes well with tears, as she never imagined a disciple could care so much about her. The moment lingers heavy with unspoken emotion. Later, the Winter Watcher's scout unit waits in the shadows, positioned for a deadly ambush at the orc camp. The silence is shattered as fire arrows rain down like fireworks, catching the orcs completely off guard. As the cavalry charges out in wedge formation, Helmut asks what Han Sung thinks of the assault. Instead of answering, the boy remains lost in thought, mentally analyzing the mechanics of the strike. He calculates the horse's speed and the lethal synergy between the crouching lance tactic and a knight's aura. Han Sung notes the attack is one-sided, and while Helmut agrees this is the pride of House Saxon, he warns that the battle is only beginning, as the orcs regroup with shields and spears to push back against the charge. The ambush was effective, but the orcs aren't wiped out. A signal rises in the sky, ordering an immediate retreat. The retreating horses move fast, but the orcs' confusion quickly turns into a dangerous irritation. One knight is targeted. A spear strikes his horse dead on, throwing him violently to the ground. Han Sung watches frozen. Though the soldier is still alive, the Duke already counts him as a casualty. An orc lunges to finish him. Han Sung looks back at the adults, demanding to know why his father and uncle just stand there watching. They only exchange silence. Han Sung begins to calculate. Charging on horseback is too slow, and orc hide is too tough for basic magic. He must adjust his formula. To survive, Han Sung decides to redesign his ice bolt, mimicking the structure of an assault rifle, to maximize both power and stability. He begins to craft it. Han Sung mimics a firearm with his fingers, taking careful aim at an orc about to crush a fallen knight. He fires a projectile that hits its target square in the head. Even from this distance, Helmut is stunned by the sheer precision. But Han Sung is already moving, his momentum fueled by a lethal intent that catches the Duke off guard. He has the mental fortitude required to face the horrors of the battlefield. He advances toward the fray, just as an orc finishes regrouping and charges directly at him. Han Sung is facing two critical issues. First, the fallen knight is panicking and unable to rise. Second, his current formula is far too long for the chaos of close combat. He needs to simplify it, and he needs to do it now. While advancing, he begins sketching a new magical variation in his mind. He needs something faster and more direct. An idea begins to take shape, a true ice bullet. As the concept solidifies, both the knight on the ground and the charging orc notice the boy's approach. At the exact right moment, Han Sung fires. The ice bullet arcs through the air and strikes the orc's head, dropping the beast instantly. The knight watches in stunned silence, wondering why the boy is risking everything to save him. Han Sung dismounts and approaches the soldier with a calm confidence. He tells the man there is no need to worry because House Saxon never abandons. A sword that shows loyalty. The knight tries to regain his composure, but two more orcs charge in with fury in their eyes. Han Sung is ready for them. He extends his hand, and as they close the distance, he releases his shadow blades. A powerful purple aura sweeps across the entire field. Han Sung shatters their weapons with ease, before commanding his dark aura to devour the beast. The monster's eyes go white, empty, and void of life. A sphere of purple energy forms around the creature, causing it to collapse lifelessly. Within seconds, the boy's necromancy magic reduces the fallen foe to a mere skeleton. Han Sung smiles, wondering why the remaining orcs haven't fled, and finishes the skirmish with a single ice bullet. Turning to the panicked soldier, the young boy assures him that everything is fine now. When the man reveals he is paralyzed by fear, Han Sung acts immediately. Using strength far beyond his 8 years, he lifts the soldier to carry him to safety, stating he will leave the rest in Helmut's hands. Watching the boy's bravery, Helmut smiles and orders all battalions to advance in a massive simultaneous assault. With the orc subjugation confirmed as complete, the Duke calls for Han Sung, demanding to know why he would be so reckless and charge into enemy lines alone. Confused and sweating, Han Sung can only stare in silence as his father's irritation grows. Han Sung tries to explain that the knights of House Saxon are the ones who will eventually serve under his command. Han Sung believes it was the right thing to do, but his father dismisses the reasoning as far too weak. Han Sung pushes back, asking why his father stood by and watched a knight die. But Alan explains that on the northern border, soldiers cannot expect to be saved. Alan's logic is cold. Waiting for a hero who may never arrive is a death sentence. A soldier must sharpen their skills constantly, especially when the Duke only intervenes when an enemy is beyond what they can handle. Han Sung realizes there is no argument against such harsh reality, feeling a heavy weight in his chest as he remembers a conviction he once held deep within his previous life. Despite the stern lecture, Alan softens, placing a hand on his son's shoulder to acknowledge that he acted according to his convictions, a trait the Duke insists must never be lost. The Duke pulls back the tent flap, letting sunlight pour in as he commands of them to return to the castle. Word of Han Sung rushing to save a knight quickly becomes the lifeblood of the Empire's gossip columns. The rumors swell, with some even claiming the young man defeated 1,000 orcs single-handedly. Though the attention is embarrassing for Han Sung, the legend brings a surge of new energy to the duchy. Months later, Han Sung finds the knights on the training grounds treating him with a newfound respect. Han Sung's growing reputation has the knights treating him like a deity, a status he's too embarrassed to accept. However, Helmut insisted that the boy should embrace the pride of such recognition by rallying the men. Helmut uses Han Sung's momentum to drive the soldiers' morale higher. As the energy in the camp rises, a maid arrives with news that the guests from House Orlhart are approaching. Han Sung thanks her, and together with Helmut, Han Sung prepares to meet these important figures. They were once great nobles, but the War of Unification changed everything. After the fall of Teutonia and the death of the Divine Sword, the family's glory was lost to ruin. The tragedy leaves Helmut visibly downcast, lost in bitter memories. Once Han Sung reaches the main hall to meet his parents, the Duke asks if he has been training. Han Sung confirms he has, just as a butler announces the guest's arrival. Alan Saxon immediately orders that they be treated with the utmost respect. A mourning woman named Vanessa Orlhart approaches the castle, accompanied by a young girl who stands in silent defiance. Vanessa glances back at her daughter, Charlotte Orlhart, with a sharp look of disapproval. Charlotte's blatant refusal to bow shocks the room, leaving the Duke to try and smooth over the tension caused by their long journey. Hoping to restore order, the Duke asks Han Sung to accompany Lady Charlotte and show her around the castle. Han Sung extends a friendly hand to the young girl, but Charlotte meets his kindness with a cold, sudden strike that leaves the Duke and Elena stunned. She slaps his hand hard, leaving Han Sung reeling from the sting and the insult. Dismissing him as an uneducated imperial noble, Charlotte refuses her mother's demand for an apology and simply walks away. Desperate to fix the situation, Vanessa begs Elena and the Duke for forgiveness, explaining that Charlotte's sudden hostility stems from a deep, recent trauma. Elena asks for the truth, and Vanessa reveals that Count Brandenburg has been appointed as the territory's inspector, known as the Pig King. He is a man obsessed with breeding powerful heirs at any cost. He hunts talented swordsmen regardless of age or gender, targeting even young girls. Vanessa reveals they fled just in time to escape his clutches. But now, as a fallen noble, she can only beg for Charlotte's safety as a servant. Meanwhile, a world away from this heavy plea, Han Sung and Charlotte find themselves alone. Han Sung asks the lost Charlotte if she even knows where she is going. She admits she doesn't, but quickly shifts the mood by checking if his hand is all right. But the concern is a front. Without warning, Charlotte draws her blade and points it directly at him. She demands a duel with an authority that leaves no room for argument, ordering him to draw his sword immediately. Han Sung hesitates, demanding a reason, but Charlotte reveals she's been tracking the rumors of his fame, a mage who has slain 1,000 orcs. To her, defeating such a legend is more than just a feat of skill. It is a way to prove that she is capable of protecting her family from the threat of the swordmaster, Count Brandenburg. The mention of the man's name sends a sudden chill through Han Sung's body. That face was all too familiar to Han Sung, another wretch from the Empire who had betrayed him in his past life. He saw a flicker of common ground between them, but first, he would teach her the harsh realities of this world. He turns away from her and grabs a sword from a nearby barrel, telling Charlotte that she still has so much to learn. With a pointed blade, he dares her to strike him with everything she has. Fueled by burning rage, Charlotte doesn't need to be told twice. She charges like a thunderbolt, and the sudden clash of steel rings out through the air. Just as mages channel mana through circles, knights push past their limits by flooding their bodies with aura. Every heavy strike from her carries that immense weight, and even so, Han Sung defends himself with effortless grace. Despite her immediate counters, Han Sung's skill is undeniable, proving that the girl's noble lineage has granted her talent far beyond his expectations. The duel drags on as the rhythmic clash of steel echoes throughout the grounds. That is when, through the training grounds, but Han Sung noticed Charlotte was fighting with a heavy burden. Her father was the legendary bearer of the divine sword, a man who never backed down, even after his homeland and family were ruined by tragedy. Driven by his legacy, Charlotte believed she had to take on that role, wielding the blade to protect her loved ones in place of the father she never knew. Yet she couldn't understand why she couldn't overcome Han Sung. In a final, desperate surge, she lunged straight for his abdomen, but Han Sung dodged and countered her in a single fluid motion. Charlotte was lost. The daughter of the divine sword simply couldn't win. Han Sung told her the truth. She wasn't the divine sword yet, and that the way she fought now, she would never be able to protect her family from the monster looming on the horizon. Desperate and broken, Charlotte began to cry. Lost and trembling, Charlotte asks for guidance, but Han Sung offers something better, a vow to become the protector of House Orlhart. Charlotte's eyes widen in shock as he continues to ask if she is willing to swear a lifelong bond to his house. She promises to become his family's sword, sealing a childhood pact that carries weight far beyond their years. It is a foundation for a future alliance that will change everything. This bond between two young prodigies is quickly finalized. Once the arrangement is settled as a servant within the duchy, Han Sung confirms that his unexpected pact with Charlotte is a sacred vow to protect House Orlhart in the name of the family. The Duke questions whether if this was done out of pity, but Han Sung reveals a higher purpose. He has recognized her talent and seeks to raise a new divine sword alongside his own family. He reveals his true ambition behind this binding promise: to forge a new divine sword to rise alongside his own, with the Duke's approval finally secured. Han Sung smiles. Count Brandenburg stands there, consumed by fury over the failed mission. Assassins meant for House Saxon were intercepted, leading the Count to cast his suspicions towards Charlotte Orlhart. As a soldier explains that assassins were intercepted before reaching House Saxon, the Count's suspicion turns towards Charlotte Orlhart, leading him to curse the incompetence of everyone under his command. Walking toward the legendary sword mounted on his wall, he traces the blade Durandal, whispering a plea to the weapon to wait just a little longer for the perfect lineage that will finally wield it. The Count turns back to his soldier with a wicked smile, ordering him to contact the Thieves' Guild immediately. "Ye will pay any price to bring Charlotte back." A week passes and Charlotte has been undergoing rigorous training as a lady-in-waiting, punctuated by regular duels with Han Sung under Helmut's watchful eye. Han Sung takes his stance with a confident smile, while Charlotte prepares with a visible sense of edge, unsettled. Helmut signals the start and the blades clash instantly. Han Sung holds the advantage by dodging, but Charlotte's rapid improvement is undeniable. As she begins to block his strikes, Helmet watches with pride, noting that their combat level has moved far beyond that of mere children, yet an intense killing intent and terrifying speed from both duelists leaves him deeply unsettled. In the heat of the fight, Han Sung attempts to use his cape as a makeshift shield. Charlotte seizes the moment, lunging forward for a decisive thrust, but Helmet intervenes to cut the strike short and praise her progress. Charlotte ignores the praise, demanding to know exactly what she is still missing from her training. Helmet asks if she understands the true principle of the rapier, which she simply replies is thrusting. However, Helmet disagrees, insisting that the real key is footwork, movement, and positioning. Han Sung demonstrates this by closing the distance and dodging every strike with precision. But his stance is still sloppy, and without a proper teacher, Charlotte's fundamentals must be rebuilt from scratch. Seeing the criticism sting her, Han Sung ruffles her hair, teasingly, claiming he was just messing with her. The tension breaks as they find a moment of levity, but even then, building a mana circle is a long, complex process that can take decades to stabilize. The heart must guide the mana until a root forms. Suddenly, Sephia asks if he has already completed his second circle, and the boy confirms that he has. Mana rotation is measured in RPM, and while most first circle mages hover around 300, Han Sung's rotation is well beyond that, suggesting he's already on the cusp of the third circle. Rather than rushing, he focuses on refining his current power by strengthening the molecular bonds of his ice bullets. To make them heavier and harder. Sephia, the elf master of water magic, smiles with pride, noting that the boy simply learns too fast. Han Sung offers his gratitude to his teacher, feeling a deep sense of appreciation. From his rescue to his ties with Charlotte, every moment deepens the trust the elf places in him. While his raw talent is almost frightening to witness, Sephia simply pulls her apprentice into a proud, tight hug, leaving the boy completely flustered. By sunset in the castle garden, Han Sung is still lost in thought, wondering if she only sees him as a child. Shaking off the distraction, he returns to training, this time developing a cartridge-shaped variation to launch a spread shot. Han Sung finishes his latest spell, contemplating how adding a fragmentation property might enhance his magic. His thoughts are interrupted by Charlotte, who approaches the training grounds looking surprised to find him there. She explains she has been practicing the footwork Helmet taught her, and Han Sung notes that she seems to be enjoying the process, and then with a visible sense of awkwardness, she begins to apologize. Charlotte admits her previous behavior was selfish and rude, even catching herself before calling him by his name instead of his proper title. Han Sung accepts her apology with a smile, telling her not to be so formal. As they lean against a tree together, Charlotte remarks on how much she loves the crisp, nighttime air, and the temperature drops quickly, making everything feel fresher. Watching her smile, Han Sung feels a sudden, unfamiliar warmth in his heart. From a window, Elena watches the pair with a knowing smile, teasing her husband that their son has entered the flirting phase. He wonders if they make a good match, but she remains playful, saying only time will tell. Believing a mother's duty is helping her son find his true feelings, Elena eventually shifts her focus to the world beyond the manor. On the outskirts of the duchy, the Duchess carries out her charity work, handing out food and supplies to the beggars and homeless in the city's poorest district. In time, both Charlotte and Han Sung join her on these visits, learning the reality of the people they serve. During one walk, a ragged little boy approaches Charlotte in tears, begging for help for his mother. Yet, Han Sung finds the boy's sudden appearance suspicious. While the group drifts away from their escort, Han Sung scans the rooftops and spots a suspicious hooded figure lurking in the shadows. He suspects the figure is a thief sent by House Saxon, and he fears Charlotte is being led into a trap. The child's story was a lie instead of a mother. A group of armed bandits suddenly emerges from the shadows surrounding the group. The leader eyes the maid beside the boy, telling Han Sung to stay out of a fight that isn't his. He brandishes a knife, warning the young master that any impulse will lead to pain. But Han Sung only smiles, declaring his vow to protect his friend from any danger. The bandit mocks his noble chivalry, laughing at the boy's misplaced sense of duty. As the thugs close in, the reality of the world's cruelty begins to settle in. Charlotte panics, realizing she is unarmed, but Han Sung remains eerily calm. He sees this not as a threat, but as the perfect chance to test his new shadow mantle. As the bandits charge, a powerful purple aura erupts from Han Sung, surging through the air. The aura forms a strange, unsettling wind that leaves even the seasoned criminals feeling uneasy. The leader screams for his men to get ready. The pressure intensifies, pushing the criminals back, but one man is caught in the center of the surge. Suddenly, the shadow mantle strikes, implanting a shadow creature into the bandit like a parasitic entity, transforming him into an undead soldier. Claws sprout from his flesh as the creature begins to scream of a hunger that can never be satisfied. Desperate to kill the monster, the leader orders his men to attack, While the green-haired man realizes that the boy's identity matters less than survival right now, the bandits swarm, but the man moves with blinding speed, hurling daggers at Han Sung. Han Sung, however, stands his ground, effortlessly shielding himself with a thick black aura. The undead bandit lunges with a direct attack, but Han Sung is already waiting. He fires a devastating projectile from his double-barreled skill, striking the enemy dead on impact. The impact sends the bandit flying, leaving Charlotte Orhart watching in total shock. Meanwhile, the undead Han Sung created continue to systematically wipe out the rest of the henchmen. The wounded leader charges in a final desperate attempt at revenge, only to be caught in a preset magic circle. Hungry for more, the undead swarm the fallen, finishing off the last of the bandits. Once the field is clear, Han Sung checks on Charlotte, but the surviving thief is watching a scene so gruesome. It looks like a horror movie. He screams in terror, but Han Sung quickly pins him to the ground with an ice bullet to the leg. After dismissing the undead, Han Sung leaves the cornered man with no choice but to beg for his life. Now, the thief promises to reveal everything, but the negotiation is cut short when a bullet strikes the thief's forehead. Han Sung coldly dismisses the man's pleas, leaving the lifeless body on the ground while a trembling Charlotte looks on, shaken to her core. Han Sung explains that the Saxon duchy's true face is something many fear, but it is also the power that can protect her. He promises. He looks at Charlotte Orhart, wondering if all this strength frightens her. She closes her eyes, claiming she is fine after seeing him fight for her. She tells him that since their oath, she has also made a promise to herself. She will become his shield. Charlotte views Han Sung as her shield, swearing that she will become a sword wielded in his service to repay him. Charlotte smiles eagerly, promising to grow stronger. Her sudden warmth leaves Han Sung visibly surprised. Lost in thought, he struggles to understand the sudden, overwhelming urge to protect her. While he wonders if it's just guilt over Lord Babel, he reaches for her, realizing her resolve carries a weight far beyond his imagination. Their hands meet, sealing a bond that can never be undone. Meanwhile, in the territory of Count Brandenburg, the man stands motionless, trembling. Sweating, the Count stares at a letter in his hands. The sender warns that the journey ahead will be difficult. The summons was an order from the Black Duke, a direct command that even a legend like the Sword Saint could not refuse. Days later, Count Brandenburg arrives at Saxon Castle to face the consequences of the recent chaos. Alan Saxon greets him and notes how quickly the night arrived. The Duke offers a polite apology for the reception. Tense and visibly shaken, Brandenburg placed a hand over his heart, insisting that nothing was more urgent than a summons from his grace. However, Alan's eyes drift toward the two children, and dark thoughts begin to cross his mind regarding whether a loyal sword of the Emperor could truly be involved in something so repugnant. Before the Count can defend himself, Alan releases a menacing purple aura in his direction. Alan's aura unleashes a powerful wind, leaving Brandenburg's men completely thrown off. In moments, the soldiers begin to disintegrate, consumed by a sudden, crushing despair. Brandenburg watches in pure shock as his order of holy knights is annihilated without even being able to fight back. Trembling, he asks the Duke what kind of magic could be so devastating. The Nile Storm, Alan declares, identifying the high-level dark magic. The message is clear. If Brandenburg ever threatens the children again, the duchy will exterminate his entire family. And Alan demands that this threat be burned deep into his mind and never forgotten. Then, his tone shifts with terrifying calm, as he offers the shaken Count hospitality, suggesting he simply rest from his long journey. Brandenburg can only offer a trembling thanks, citing urgent circumstances. The Count makes a hasty exit from the territory. As he turns to leave, Alan calmly wishes him a safe return journey. But Brandenburg, a loyal follower of the Emperor, leaves with more than just fear. Carries the weight of a witness who has just seen something far too important for the Empire to ignore. Brandenburg's testimony is a detonator that could shake the foundations of the entire Empire. Small spark, but that spark will soon turn into a fire, and in the end, slaying the Sword Saint belongs to a hero of legend. Over, as rumors swirl of the Sword Saint kneeling to the Black Duke, Alan pulls back a cloth, revealing a sight that leaves Cepheus speechless. Stretched out before her are the mutilated bodies of the bandits who attacked Han Sung, and Sophia can hardly believe her own student left them in such a state. The bodies are horrific, mutilated, and riddled with holes. Looking at them, Sophia begins to question if her way of teaching is truly right, but Alan insists she is indispensable for guiding Han Sung's talent, offering her the position of chief advisor. The elf bows her head, realizing the true weight of the invitation. She is being summoned into the Saxon family, not merely acting as a tutor. With Han Sung's father present, such a task cannot be handled alone, and the Saxon family knows everything changes with a powerful elf by his side in a firm voice. Sophia accepts. The weight of her new duty looms as time slips toward Han Sung's 10th birthday. Among the high society elite gathered for the banquet is the red-haired Marquis Ulysse, a man known for his gentle smile. Greeting the boy with unexpected warmth, Ulysse charmfully meets young Han Sung, all while the guests marvel at the incredible luxury of the Saxon feast. Amidst the luxury of the northern banquet, the sheer abundance of the feast leaves even the most seasoned nobles stunned. The presence of the imperial capital's elite is no coincidence. Their arrival sends a chilling message from the emperor himself. They refuse to stand aside while an insult is leveled against the sword saint, and no one embodies that resolve more than the man approaching Han Sung. Ulysse, the leader of the Red Magic Tower, greets him with a smile and a calculated bow. His tower is one that prizes raw power above all else. These mages serve any greater ambition that provides them with strength. Han Sung has already passed through their hands before, and now Ulysse is speaking of the boy's terrifying reputation. He speaks of unmatched talent, recalling the breathtaking rumors of a 9-year-old wiping out an entire orc order to protect a family knight. Training is always exhausting. If he had the choice, Han Sung would be sparring with Charlotte right now, but since she is officially one of his mother's attendants, it would be far too dangerous if the world discovered the sword god's daughter was practicing combat. His thoughts are shattered by a desperate cry. A woman lies, pleading on the ground, begging for mercy as a servant of House Saxon, while Han Sung rushes toward the scene. A stocky red-haired man named Petro glares at her with contempt, claiming a mere servant has no right to even mention the duchy's name. While the rest of the household celebrates the young lord's birthday, this man intends to use the distraction to own way, cornering the girl and ordering her to do as he says. The man tries to muddle an explanation, but the boy will not back down. Petro simply responds with a disgusting grin. Petro suggests he could personally teach Han Sung about the pleasures of women, but Han Sung has no patience for such filth. He begins gathering magic in his palm and declares that he is going to save her. Petro assumes the boy will never dare to attack someone so clearly connected to the powerful hierarchy. But Petro was wrong. An incredibly sharp shard of ice grazes his face, sending the man to the ground in terror. Despite the risk of defying the Empire, Han Sung refuses to back down. Demanding an apology from Miss Eve, Han Sung makes his stance clear, insisting that, as a member of House Saxon, she deserves respect. Yet Petro remains defiant, claiming he represents the emperor and that protecting a mere servant is unforgivable. Han Sung fires back, questioning if the empire's custom is to harass the people, challenging the man's authority once and for all. As others arrive, Han Sung issues a final warning for the man to kneel, while Ulysse watches the scene with a curious smile, finding the whole spectacle quite interesting. Alan steps in to demand order, but the Duke questions if Han Sung's outrage over a servant is enough to disrespect Petro. Yet Han Sung refuses to let the man stand. He declares that by harassing a servant, Petro has tarnished the emperor's name. Ulysse agrees, praising Han Sung's logic and noting that those acting in the emperor's name should never commit such shameful acts. The mage begins gathering magic in his palm, preparing a decisive strike. With a single word Talora, he condemns the worm to death, sending Petro into a desperate, futile flight. It is no use, for the flames have already begun to consume him. A burst of fire strikes Petro head-on, bringing unbearable pain as he is incinerated. As the man turns to ash, Ulysse simply observes that justice has been served. The message is clear. Anyone who insults the imperial family will be punished, and expectations for Han Sung's future are incredibly high. Han Sung realizes that such heavy expectations might not actually be a compliment. With the emperor's men gone, peace finally returns to the castle, and a maid enters to wake him. She tells him it's time to get up, but Han Sung notices a quiet sadness on her face. When he asks if there is more, she hesitates before offering the formal honor of service. A strange distance Han Sung knows he must learn to endure. He thanks her, acting as though it is nothing special. Yet, Han Sung remains acutely aware of his identity as the eldest son of House Saxon, ready to use every resource to tear down the empire. Later, Alan calls his son aside for a talk. He tells him that while he has always seen him as a brilliant child, his recent behavior has been strangely off. Han Sung, remaining cautious, prepares to respond. Han Sung begins to explain his reasoning to his father. If the hero from another world hadn't died fighting Divine Sword Lord Bartel, the Saxon Duchy would have been the Empire's next target. Alan finds the claim bold and demands to know how he can be so certain. Deep down, Han Sung knows he cannot reveal the truth of his past life, so he offers a justification he can actually defend. When the hero defeated the Demon King, the Empire didn't clear the darkness from that land. Instead, they claimed the land as imperial domain and forced House Saxon to fund its cultivation. As long as that darkness persists, the Empire will keep using the Saxon family to manage it. Alan warns that constant scrutiny will drain the family's resources and brand them as the Dark Clan. If the Empire senses a threat, they will move to eliminate them. Officially, the records say the hero died honorably facing Lord Bartel, but the truth is far more sinister. Han Sung's theory reveals a grim reality. The Empire's justice is nothing but systemic oppression against those they cannot control. Alan acknowledges that his son possesses a wisdom far beyond his tender years. Therefore, the choice is simple. There can be no coexistence with such a regime. With a serious look, Alan asks if Han Sung truly understands the weight of such a claim. Han Sung explains it is not a sudden rebellion, but a decade-long plan to capitalize on the continent's growing unrest and the failures of an aging empire. Until then, House Saxon must build strength to support the brewing resistance movements. Han Sung lays out his strategy as the sun begins to set, finally asking for his father's thoughts. A sudden smile spreads across the Duke's face, which soon transforms into a hearty laugh. He declares Han Sung will no longer be treated as a mere child, but with the respect owed to the future leader of House Saxon. Alan promises to respect him as an equal, asking what decision he makes for the family. Seizing the opportunity, Han Sung asks for permission to enter the Tower Trial in Necropolis. Han Sung is driven by a single goal. But it is far too early for such glory, as Han Sung has not even reached the third circle yet. Han Sung insists he will reach it soon, but Alan notes that the third circle is usually only achieved after the age of 20. And even for a second circle mage, the feat is incredibly difficult. Undeterred, Han Sung explains that proving his worth at the tower is the best way to secure House Saxon's future. By gaining a real reputation, rather than relying on rumors, he can strengthen his father's position as Duke. When asked if that is his true motive, Han Sung confirms it, earning a faint, understanding smile from the great necromancer. Han Sung notices the exaggerated reverence surrounding him, realizing the formal treatment is far more than necessary as he and his father arrive. Whispers erupt from the gathering crowd. They recognize the young man as a magic prodigy, though he looks exhausted. Some claim his swordplay is already on par with the Duke's knights. Interrupting the murmurs, a blonde-haired man named Velik declares himself the top academy graduate and thus the only one who deserves to win the Tower Trial. Amidst this tension, a young woman approaches to offer her respects to the Lord of the Tower. The woman is Eris, whom the Duke notes he hasn't seen in quite some time. As an elder of the Tower and the current Secretary General, Eris oversees all affairs in the Black Duke's absence. Han Sung introduces himself politely, prompting Eris to ask her lord to follow her. She explains that 59 graduates are already gathered, and as the heavy doors swing open, the true scale of the competition is finally revealed. A sea of competitors stands ready as Eris takes the stage to address the massive gathering. This is a battle royale where the cost of failure is life itself. As she explains the cruel mechanics of the Dark Magic Tower's first floor, each participant is bound by a life point collar around their neck, which acts as a death sentence. Every collar features a protective shield and exactly 1 life point. To advance, one must secure 3 points by using corpses to break an opponent's shield. It is a brutal system designed to purge the weak immediately. Meanwhile, rumors begin to swirl about the young lord's terrifying potential. Among the competitors, whispers grow louder. Han Sung tells his companions there's no reason to worry. As the signal sounds, the trial begins, and every competitor suddenly turns their magic circles on him at once. One man channels energy into his arm and hurls a purple sphere at the ground, summoning an undead. Spells fly and demonic creatures emerge, surrounding the young man in an instant. A machete-wielding zombie lunges with a killing blow, but Han Sung's shield only blocks the only thing that blocks the second strike. Another undead suddenly appears from thin air to intercept the blow with its claws. No one even saw the summoning. While manipulating dark magic, Han Sung had also used water magic to slick the battlefield without anyone noticing. The creature he summoned charges forward to destroy an opponent's monster. The summoner watches in fury, unable to understand how anyone could destroy his creation, yet Han Sung's monster continues to block every attack. The summoned creature is further armored by ice magic. Even more resilient, Velik steps forward, demanding to know if this water magic violates the rules. He argues that only dark magic, like summoning or enhancing undead, should be permitted in the trial. Han Sung turns to Eris, looking for any loophole that would allow him to use his diverse talents. With the trial continuing despite the protest, Velik has no choice but to order his allies to hold back the undead while he targets Han Sung directly. The summoner is certain that his overwhelming numbers will be enough to crush a single opponent, but Han Sung is already processing the rules, realizing he can't use artifacts and must rely on his wits. A dangerous plan begins to take shape as the young man weaves through the enemy field. Weaving between the creatures until he reaches a zombie armed with a knife, he closes the distance dangerously fast. He prepares to strike with his fist. He wrenches the weapon from the zombie and hits it with an energy-charged punch, then grabs the knife in his hand to use as a weapon. Valak and other participants stare in shock as the undead is cut down with ease, suspecting the blade is far from ordinary. They have no idea that Han Sung has restructured the bones internally to increase the blade's durability. The carnage begins. Like a thunderbolt, Han Sung tears through the field, delivering precise, rapid strikes to every opponent in his path. Velik watches in disbelief as his summoned soldiers fall one by one, unable to grasp how a mage could be so skilled with a sword. Now that the soldiers are gone, Han Sung corners Velik, who begins to beg for mercy. Han Sung simply notes that he isn't actually going to kill him. With one clean strike to the head, the confrontation is over. Velik hits the ground, knocked out instantly. With his life points untouched, Han Sung is the only one to advance, and he prepares to cast a spell. The first phase is over, but the second stage of the tower trial is just beginning. The goal is to defeat the Guardian, the flesh golem, and while others would typically work together, Han Sung has cleared everyone else out of his way. He faces this trial alone, where any form of magic is permitted. Since artifacts are forbidden, the Shadow Cloak remains out of reach, but this is the perfect moment for Han Sung to test his third magic circle with everything he has. Without warning, the massive golem attacks. A punch falls with the force of thunder, and the creature smiles, certain it has crushed him. Only then does it realize its own hand is engulfed in eternal purple flames. The magic was applied in silence before the blow even landed. This is corrupt acceleration, a technique created by Han Sung himself. Rather than a quick death, the magic works by corroding the target from within. Using the biological warfare tactics he mastered in his past life, Han Sung ensures the target's end is slow and agonizing. The smell of decay soon rises from the golem's broken body. Very few truly grasp the terror of this magic. By shattering every record through the 10th phase, Han Sung earns 4 days of rest, leaving the other 59 candidates in utter shock while they undergo reassessment. That night, Han Sung finds himself standing by a fountain in silence. A voice calls out his name, causing him to turn in surprise. It's Sephia. The water mage praises his performance, but Han Sung humbly credits his success to her teachings. After a moment of genuine gratitude from the master, Han Sung addresses her with sudden seriousness, extending an unexpected invitation. Han Sung asks Sephia to join him at the city festival, and despite her hesitation, she agrees, though she realizes her student might be too young to understand the gravity of the moment. The streets soon come alive with the noise of the Necropolis festival, and fireworks explode across the night sky. As they walk, Sophia asks if he is tired from his recent trial, but Han Sung explains that he has several days of rest ahead before his next phase of training begins. An awkward silence settles between them. Yet, the beauty of the full moon makes the moment hard to ignore. Sephia watches the lights with a quiet smile. Han Sung notices that while talking with her isn't easy, it's a silence. Had always trusted him. However, this piece is a far cry from the darkness he encountered just days ago. While reaching the third magic circle, Han Sung entered the dangerous mind space Sephia had warned him about, a trial so intense that blood began to drip from his nose. To transcend his limits, Han Sung must force his mana beyond the capacity of the second circle, and trigger a backflow just to reach the third. It's a feat nearly impossible for a child. The mana ravages him, causing a pain so sharp it feels like a blade through his heart. As he grips his sword, his consciousness suddenly snaps, transporting him somewhere else. He awakens in a desolate, snowy field, staring at hands that belong to his past life. This is his mindscape, a fragmented realm split between his current self and his previous incarnation. The landscape is nothing but an endless void, except for one single vital anchor. In this emptiness, his master's hand is the only thing he can hold on to. Perhaps that's why he yearns for her to truly belong to his world. Shaking, Han Sung finds his voice. He confesses his love to Sephia, leaving the mage stuttering in sheer disbelief. She asks him to repeat it, and even through the nerves he does. Sephia stares at him, frozen. Sephia offers a warm smile and pulls Han Sung into a gentle, sisterly embrace. She says she understands and that she cares for him, leaving Han Sung to wonder if having a second life really does bring its own unique advantages. A few days pass, until the bright morning of the Tower Challenge arrives. Nothing changes between them. To prove he isn't just a child, Han Sung decides to focus entirely on the trial. This time, the test is a magic duel. The winner advances to the next phase. His opponent is Elbert Rosenheim, a third circle master who refuses to go easy on a child. In this stage, magic and artifacts are allowed without restriction, meaning not even a protection amulet can guarantee survival. Han Sung is ready to show the true difference in their power. But before he can act, a purple aura surges toward him. The magic explodes, erupting in a dense, bomb-like cloud. Elbert warns that overconfidence will end Han Sung's run, immediately unleashing a volley of dark magic arrows from multiple circles. He demands that the boy take it all. Han Sung doesn't even attempt to block. Instead, he dodges each deadly strike evading every single strike with effortless precision. Such underhanded tactics before the duel has even officially begun should be punished, but the evaluators are far too curious to see how far this prodigy can go. This is exactly why Han Sung can never stand mages. Desperate to regain control, Elbert grips his book and in a pompous display summons a horde of undead that demand his absolute loyalty. It's a painful spectacle to watch, and yet the man's power is undeniable as Han Sung evades the advancing monsters with total ease. Elbert taunts him, questioning how long he can keep dodging and if he actually thinks he can win. But a sudden purple aura pierces through an axe-wielding undead. That energy surges outward, wiping out the entire horde while Elbert keeps his arrogant smile. Suddenly, the dying creatures trigger a massive self-destruction, engulfing the arena in a thick cloud of dust. The mage declares victory in the haze, but when he opens his eyes, his opponent has vanished. Confused, Elbert looks around, wondering when his opponent moved, but all he hears is Han Sung's voice echoing through the arena, calling his tactics cowardly. The mage searches for the source, unable to pinpoint where the sound originated. Suddenly, Han Sung appears behind him, wrapped in a spectral form and noting his opponent's shock. Han Sung begins closing in, making it clear that Elbert is still nowhere near defeating him as dark energy pins the mage to the ground, to consume him. All while Han Sung watches with a faint smile. As the creatures close in, the spectators watch in horror, feeling as though they are witnessing a living nightmare. Elbert is being twisted and dragged toward the edge of being devoured,
while Han Sung notes that the creatures might have simply gotten carried away by hunger.
Desperate, the mage begs for his life, but Han Sung has already moved past this level of struggle. By the time the final matches roll around, nearly everyone has withdrawn from the competition. Instead, Han Sung forms a magic circle, ordering the monsters to stand down. Once Elbert collapses unconscious, the first match is declared over. Han Sung stands with his hands on his hips, boldly asking who is next. Most are too terrified to face what they just witnessed. Refining his magic circles, Han Sung tears through the remaining guardians with ease. But on the 20th floor, a worthy opponent finally appears. A headless knight on horseback, summoned by an elder of the Black Tower, looms before him. This might be the young master's limit. Even so, Han Sung finds the prospect of using obvious strategies to be incredibly boring. The charging knight suddenly halts and kneels in total reverence, as if acknowledging its true lord. Han Sung watches in silence, expression unreadable, as he enters an inner world shared only with the knight. He issues a single command: end your existence. Without a moment's hesitation, the guardian obeys. The blade passes through its own body, and the figure falls. To Han Sung, this sudden loyalty isn't much, but while Han Sung remains unimpressed, the stunned crowd sees something much more significant. A creation abandoning its maker to swear loyalty to another implies one terrifying thing: Han Sung's power now rivals the Elder of the Black Tower. Satisfied, he decides there is no need to go any further.
The spectators question
his decision, unable to understand, but Han Sung knows there's a line he simply should not cross. Han Sung knows that pushing his boundaries further would invite dangerous territory, so he brings the challenge to an end. Even the tower itself seems to acknowledge the close of this journey. When the Duke arrives, every person in attendance bows in reverence. Even the Black Tower pays its respects to his presence. From the nobles of House Saxon to the most powerful mages and elders, everyone lowers their heads before the Duke and his heir. These extraordinary feats are beginning to unite the entire northern region, little by little, across the Duchy of Saxon, located in the far north of the empire. On the battlefield, a warrior charges forward with a spear, taking down 2 orcs. Another fighter raises his weapon, shouting that he fights for House Saxon and the young master, Han Sung. Having completed his tower challenge, Han Sung has been assigned by the Duke to lead an operation against the orc horde, with spearmen, warriors, and knights marching under his command. Men and knights begin to unify the north, all under a bright, clear sky. The kingdom watches as a new era begins. The mission report confirms a bloody success. 45 orcs were eliminated from the field. When the Duke inquires about cavalry casualties, the response is minimal, with only 3 soldiers suffering minor injuries. The Duke questions if magic was used for protection, but the answer is firm. It was the merit of House Saxon swords. And the Duke smiles, congratulating his son. Helmut notes that Han Sung has truly matured, stepping perfectly into his role as commander. It was Helmut himself who taught Han Sung the lethal arts of swordsmanship, strategy, and war. The day Han Sung finally takes command of his own territory is fast approaching, and the thought alone fuels his ambition. Meanwhile, Charlotte trains with intense focus, lunging forward with a sharp shout to strike at her sparring partner. Her opponent dodges the blade with ease, immediately countering with a swift movement. Han Sung's speed has increased so much that his movements are becoming hard to follow, though the tip of her sword passes dangerously close to his chin. Han Sung laughs, noting how much she has improved, but the girl's expression shifts as she suggests that his praise makes him sound like a different person. He asks if he sounds like a completely different person lately. She points out that, treating him with nothing but flattery, and she wonders if that doesn't bother him. Smiling, he tells her to relax, promising that she'll become strong soon enough, despite her being only 10 years old. Clearly she isn't ready to be coddled, as she snaps at him not to treat her like a child. Han Sung fires back that she is won, prompting the young blonde to point a finger directly at his face. Han Sung reminds her that she is still a child, sparking a protest where Charlotte decides to end their argument. Later, Helmut meets with his student to announce a special lesson, the hammer and anvil tactic. The maneuver involves the cavalry surrounding the enemy from the flanks, while the infantry holds the front line. Like metal being forged, the target is pressed between two forces, with no way to escape. Han Sung realizes this strategy relies on the strength of the black cavalry, leading him to conclude that, ask about Charlotte's training. Helmut admits her path differs from the boys, but her sword skills are solid enough that she will soon master the Saxon family's aura techniques. Even so, a shadow of doubt lingers in his eyes. Yet a lingering concern clouds his expression. Han Sung quickly pieces together the truth about the family's training style. Just as mages use mana, knights must refine their aura through intense internal training. The mighty black cavalry dominates wars, whereas the Northern Order of the Night Raven prioritizes pure strength and power. But Charlotte's speed-based style poses a problem for her potential. Her father once held one of the kingdom's most elite positions, recognized for his exceptional skill. Thinking of the legendary spring sword, Han Sung wonders if that ancient technique truly vanished when the knights fell, or if it's still out there waiting. While he works to build his name through battle, his moment of truth is approaching. The wait is over, as a sudden meeting is called to discuss a grim report. The Duke demands answers to the news that has just arrived. Baron Fokker, a lesser lord from a neighboring territory, has officially declared domain war to seize a local copper mine. While such a challenge to House Saxon seems foolish, the true danger lies behind the scenes. If the Saxons refuse the Baron's terms, the Grand Duke of Brandenburg might join the fray to claim a piece of the riches. With the possibility of the Order of St. Madalena mobilizing, Han Sung feels a growing sense of dread. Everything suggests that a direct war was too risky for the Count, so he has chosen a different path. Seeking action, Han Sung approaches his father to request that he personally lead the defense of their lands. This kind of politics is far more complex than subduing monsters, and the boy needs to learn discretion. Turning to the messenger, the Duke, Han Sung's father, reassures Baron Greenbelt that the mine will be protected. The man feels relieved, but still remains on edge. Later, Han Sung vents to Helmut, insisting he could perform better than anyone else, though the knight only listens, but noted the Duke surely had his reasons to change the subject. Helmut revealed a special training tool, a board game reminiscent of chess. He explained it was modeled after real battles, and while the rules were quite incredibly, Helmut added, the game offered a rare chance to master deep strategy. Han Sung grabbed the board and bolted, leaving Helmut stunned. Moments later, the boy reappeared before his father with a bold proposal. If he won a match, he wanted permission to fight in the territorial war. He argues that war is more than just brute force, demanded to be judged by his wits. Helmut tried to intervene, but the Duke cut him off and accepted the high-stakes challenge. The stakes were clear. If Han Sung won, he would enter the war. If he lost, he would never ask again. As the match began, Helmut watched the board closely, and he was stunned by what he saw. The boy was playing with a brilliance far beyond his years. After an intense contest, Han Sung secured a 2-1 victory, overcoming the Duke's superior numbers and positioning. He claimed he had simply studied the game in the library, but the Duke saw through the lie. Honoring his word, he entrusted his son with command of the knights for the upcoming battle. With Saxon's honor on the line, failure is unthinkable. His father demands to know if he can carry such a heavy burden, but Han Sung responds with a single, unwavering request for trust. His father grants it, looking forward to seeing the results of his training. Meanwhile, at Malbert Castle, the residence of Grand Duke Brandenburg, tension is thick in the air. The Grand Duke is currently discussing the unsettling rumors that Saxon's heir will lead the knights into battle. Confused by the idea, Philip scoffs at the prospect, looking upon the boy with pure contempt. He asks to crush the arrogant fool, but Brandenburg slams his hand on the table in fury. He warns that Philip is underestimating the opponent in the most absurd way possible. To the Grand Duke, Han Sung is a monster one that even his own son wouldn't match in 10 years. Brandenburg vents his rage at Philip's uselessness, ultimately deciding to grant him command in name only. In reality, Deputy Lord Milvas will lead, with instructions to keep the boy away from any real danger. The Duke realizes he cannot bring himself to confront a child, and he begins to suspect that everything might be part of Duke Saxon's plan from the very beginning. Elsewhere, Helmut and Han Sung celebrate their recent victory. Days later at Greenbelt Castle, the massive gates swing open as armored soldiers approach, leaving the nervous Baron in charge of the mine visibly shaken. The arrival of the young commander sparks shock among the onlookers, as they stare at the child, wondering if he can even hold a sword. To the Baron, sending a 10-year-old to lead cavalry is a lethal risk, so he tries to deflect the tension by suggesting a banquet. But Han Sung refuses, cutting through the polite stalling with a bluntness that catches the host off guard. Suddenly, the boy holds his sword to the Baron's throat, declaring that his priority is to inspect the soldiers. He then throws down a direct challenge to the room. Who is the strongest here? A scarred, red-haired warrior cuts in, arrogantly claiming he is the strongest man present, though Han Sung's unwavering confidence. Yet the boy's confidence unsettles him. As the Baron breathes a sigh of relief, Han Sung watches the stranger with a wary eye, sensing the tension. To prove them wrong, he strikes his sword against the ground. Han Sung makes it clear, if his own ability is questioned, he questions the competence of the entire Baron's army. He settles the argument with the edge of a blade. With a cold smile, he delivers a stinging insult. The territory's strongest knight is nothing more than a drunkard. That single truth exposes the true weakness of these troops. Infuriated by the boy's calmness, the red-haired warrior draws his sword. Heiberg, a knight seeking to prove the barony's strength, points his blade at Han Sung with a trembling voice. But Han Sung only keeps smiling as the tension between them thickens. Han Sung asks if Heiberg is familiar with his sword, prompting the knight to think about the dangerous reputation of that unusual blade and whether Han Sung's confidence is merely a trick. Before any doubts can be settled, Heiberg charges with a desperate, full speed, swinging his sword with everything he has. Han Sung blocks the strike with a single magically reinforced hand, showing no fear as he pushes the knight back. Heiberg tenses as dark energy begins to rise from the ground. The attack is completely neutralized, leaving Han Sung to study his opponent. He notes the lack of aura, a technique for high-level knights, and decides to respond in kind. Therefore, he decides to respond in kind, manifesting a dark magic circle in his hand. Shadows rise from the earth to close in on the knight. Heiberg lashes out with his blade, but the strikes have no effect against the dark energy. The pressure builds until the knight's focus finally cracks. While Han Sung maintains control of the circle and observes his limited opponent, something happens that catches him completely off guard. Heiberg cries out in pain and collapses to the ground, defeated. The fall is as quick as it is unexpected. It is hard to believe that the region's strongest soldier could be dismantled in mere moments. The Baron panics, demanding to know how Han Sung could have the audacity to strike such a vital man right before a decisive battle. Han Sung steps forward and retorts, "D for him. If the territory's strongest knight can fall like this, things are critical. House Saxon must protect its loyalists, but negligence cannot be excused. Everyone must do their part." He declares his knights will be the sword for the people, but there is a cost. A choice must be made right now. They must follow him, or they will lose everything, including their homes, in the coming war. Stirred by his conviction, the soldiers begin to kneel. They swear absolute loyalty to the young commander. Later, as night falls, Elena lies awake, clearly worried, while the Duke tries to calm her. He whispers that their son possesses a power that goes far beyond what meets the eye, facing a future that is truly hard to imagine. With a calm smile, the Duke's confidence is unwavering, certain that the boy is destined to rule this entire world. Meanwhile, Han Sung sits alone in his room, thinking back to his former life, beyond the confines of his previous life. Now his vision is clear. He suspects the sacred swordsman's choice of this barony was a calculated move. The next day arrives with the sun high in the sky. The heat is already building as Heiberg appears, struggling under the weight of an enormous rock on his back. Exhausted, the soldier begs to stop, but is immediately scolded for his weakness and ordered to press on. In the distance, Han Sung watches this display in silence. He notices that even at the beginning of training, the red-haired man is already struggling, There is a mountain of work left to raise the level of the Greenbelt Barony's knights. Yet, Han Sung has other priorities. There is a specific person he must meet first. Han Sung takes his seat at the head of the table, calmly sizing up the room. In his head, the math is already done, and he knows that within a few weeks, something inevitable is going to happen. Preemptive strike. He cannot forget, cavalry forces are far too dangerous to underestimate. The tension is broken only when a messenger announces the arrival of young Master Philip. Han Sung had expected this arrival, and Philip walks in with an air of unearned superiority, acting like a commander in name only. The young man offers a sarcastic smile and a taunting hand. Are they actually afraid of a real war? While Philip performs for the room, the silent true leader of the battle follows closely behind. Han Sung offers a brief greeting, but Philip only responds with arrogance. Han Sung doesn't flinch, cutting through the nonsense to ask exactly why they have accepted his negotiation proposal. Before Philip can even speak, Han Sung cuts him off, making it clear the question wasn't meant for him. He makes it clear he has no interest in a decorative puppet, but rather the tension escalates as Milva, the Sword of Chastity, makes her presence known as the true commander. Irritation. Yet Han Sung holds firm. Seeking to maintain order, Milva tries to keep the peace and urges Philip not to let himself be provoked. Maintain control, urging Philip to keep his emotions in check. However, a chilling thought haunts the room. How could the enemy know about the Count's private contempt for his own son? Negotiation is over, but Philip slams the table in a fit of rage, demanding, but Han Sung refuses to back down, continuing his relentless pressure. Han Sung mocks Philip, asking if he needs permission just to speak, and comparing his subservient posture to that of a slave. He suggests the real control doesn't lie with Philip, but with Milva herself. He implies the collar is being worn by the owner rather than the dog, as the knight's attempt to intervene fails to quell the mounting irritation. Satisfied by the chaos, Han Sung leans back with his hands behind his head, savoring the friction he has ignited between them. The tension was calculated. There was never any interest in negotiating, only a strategy to destabilize the enemy's command. Seeking to lower the tension, Han Sung calls for bail and asks Milva to step outside. Once the long-haired man has left the room, Han Sung offers a friendly smile, suggesting the two of them talk alone. Since they are the supreme commanders for this battle, it only makes sense for them to deal with each other, even if the irritation on Philip's face is plain to see. Taking the bait, the blonde orders Milva to leave immediately, even if it means walking straight into Han Sung's trap. With no other choice, Milva obeys. Now alone with his enemy, Han Sung claims he has a condition. Actually convince Philip. He proposes a simple trade. If the Order of Knights of St. Madalena withdraws now, the Saxon family will provide all necessary supplies for their return. But Philip explodes, slamming the table in a rage as he mocks the pathetic offer. Han Sung apologizes for his tone, but he isn't backing down from his request. He warns that failure to withdraw means total annihilation, dragging the holy swordsman's reputation and the young master's name through the dirt. It is Philip's final chance to preserve his honor before it's too late. He declares that Milva was right, and Han Sung's words were nothing but a mockery. Han Sung just smiles sarcastically, noting, it's a shame, because this would have been Philip's true last. He is looking for a way out. The real loser of this battle won't be Milva's, but the incompetent, useless son of the Count's family. A wicked smile spreads across Philip's face as he dismisses the boy's insults. He scoffs, claiming the days of an arrogant brat like Han Sung are numbered. Han Sung simply hopes the blonde can hold on to that confidence for a while longer. Time passes after the failed negotiation, and in barren Greenbelt's territory, Philip awaits. Philip questions his soldiers about the enemy's movements, only to learn that the Saxon knights are already on the move. Even as a child, the boy didn't have the face of a beginner. To Philip, that strength makes the 10-year-old a threat that must be silenced at the root. Silenced. Meanwhile, an informant warns Han Sung that the enemy is advancing north. Gripping his sword, Han Sung prepares his men for the inevitable. Today, they will prove why they are worthy of their name as the battle begins. As the signal sounds, both armies charge into the chaos of war. Steel clashes and blood spills as the first casualties fall in the opening moments. A blonde commander watches the chaos and orders his cavalry to advance, hoping to hold back the Night Raven Knights and the Saxon forces. Since his troops cannot grasp the true power of that order, he moves to the center of the formation, away from the front. To secure an advantage, Baron Parker's troops charge through the left flank to pin down the cavalry movements, while Count Brandenburg's elite prepares a risky flanking maneuver to crush the enemy main force. Even with high morale, the danger is palpable. Melvin realizes just how perilous this gamble is, watching as the enemy warriors fight with a desperation that fight for the Count's family. Amidst the chaos, something unexpected happens. The chaos halts as a sudden presence emerges at the front line. A presence emerges at the front line, causing the soldiers to step back in surprise. Young Master Han Sung has personally advanced onto the field, his voice cutting through the noise of weapons to issue a command. Han Sung's command ensures the Saxon family will fight to the end. Han Sung has calculated this perfectly, offering himself as bait to force a direct confrontation. But nothing can shake his resolve. Raising a hand in the name of Saint Madeleine, he leads the charge alongside Elena. Their momentum carries them forward with overwhelming force. Meanwhile, seeing the chaos, a commander orders his cavalry to follow him in a desperate attempt to defeat the young master and end this war once and for all. Driven by pure hatred, the cavalryman charges through the fray, his lethal strikes cutting down enemies in his path. A screaming soldier suddenly appears, thrusting a spear directly at him. The blade comes dangerously close. The spear tip grazes the blonde's neck, but he intercepts the strike in time, cutting down his attacker before the blow can land. He keeps pushing forward, driven by a relentless determination. But after cutting through several enemies, he starts to feel the weight of fatigue. More troubling is a growing sense of unease. Even as he dominates the elite fighters, the Night Raven order falls back far too easily. The Black Cavalry shouldn't be reacting like this. The dread doesn't go. Amidst the chaos, a messenger rushes forward with news that turns the tide. Without any chance to resist, across the battlefield, soldiers are dropping one after another. Greenbelt's troops are utilizing aura to devastating effect. As Baron Parker's lines shatter, the remaining soldiers are desperately waiting for a decision. The commander hesitates, the young enemy's words about his own incompetence echoing in his mind. In the midst of this doubt, a messenger arrives with a plan to reinforce the left flank, but it only sparks immediate irritation. The blonde commander snaps, demanding that everyone shut up. He shifts his focus, ordering the rear cavalry to strike the right flank and eliminate the enemy commander. He is obsessed with a singular target, but his plan faces a complication. Han Sung is already leading that very same unit toward the field. The situation turns critical as moving more troops could compromise their mobility, and the left flank grows more vulnerable by the minute. Blinded by his obsession to win, the blonde commander ignores every plea for help. As the enemy encirclement closes in, the messengers beg for a retreat, but the commander refuses to act until the moment is right. When he looks back, he finds the true source of his agitation. Han Sung is there, watching, already won, a sight that sends Philip into a blind fury. He raises his sword and calls for the cavalry. Confused soldiers watch the battlefield in silence, waiting for any sign of direction. Philip closes his eyes to invoke Saint Madeleine, praying for blessings and protection from the sister goddesses to guide his men through the carnage. But when he opens them, his prayer is forgotten, replaced by pure hatred. The decision is made. He has made his choice. They will charge through the lines to claim the opposing general's head. He screams the order for an all-out advance, even if it means certain death.
Milvis's troops march toward Han Sung, walking straight into his trap.
As the blonde cavalry attempts to close the encirclement from behind, Han Sung remains unmoved. Han Sung remains calm. He knows that anxiety and fear only distort judgment, and in this moment, there is no room for either. With a mocking edge, he asks if they've never seen magic before unleashing a lethal ice arrow. The arrow strikes a horse with terrifying precision, sending its rider crashing to the ground, leaving the blonde cavalrymen staring in shock at Han Sung's command as a massive wall of ice erupts from the earth, completely severing the enemy's path. The sudden barrier leaves the soldiers hesitating in terror. Without a second to breathe, Han Sung orders the advance. His troops charge with everything they have, swearing to be their young master's shield. The enemy line begins to crumble as soldiers fall one after another. On the other side, the blonde commander reaches for his head, looking utterly lost. The realization hits him too late. This was a trap designed to isolate and break his formation. He has walked straight into a slaughter, leaving his front line twisted and broken. Driven by desperation, Han Sung decides to push forward, hoping to turn the tide of the battle by breaking through the enemy line. He smashes through the wall and raises his sword to end the fight. But there is no fear on the other side, only a calm smile before a sudden deafening crash. As the dust settles, the once proud blonde commander is forced to his knees along with his men. The battlefield now belongs to the young commander, proving that the era of Aura Knights is failing against his new tactics. Han Sung had already calculated every move and every pattern. Everything was stored in his memory from a past life, back when he was the one commanding these very same troops. Suddenly, a breathless messenger rushes in to report that the left flank has fallen and Baron Parker has been captured. The blonde commander, still reeling, asks if this was all part of a plan, but Han Sung simply tells him that the battlefield is chaos, and while nothing is certain, Han Sung makes it clear that choosing to die is entirely optional. He lays down his terms with cold efficiency. Mercy and life are available, but only for those willing to pay in gold. The soldier's indignation is met with sudden, lethal violence as a snap of fingers sends a soldier plummeting to the ground. With a spear driven through a heart, the message is received. Han Sung looks the blonde commander in the eye, asking for his final choice. A heavy, suffocating silence falls over the clearing. Then the commander finally bows his head in defeat, warning his peers that this boy is far too dangerous to be left unchecked. The broken commander screams for his men to kneel, demanding the rights of prisoners under imperial tradition. As Han Sung watches his enemies beg, he realizes taunting is pointless, yet a faint smile touches his lips. Then comes the verdict. No one survives. With an almost innocent expression, Han Sung orders them all killed. Even the Necro Knights are caught off guard by such ruthlessness. By imperial custom, the captured should be kept for ransom, but Han Sung's voice is far too absolute. On this field, his will is the only one that matters, and one man is destined for total destruction. Consumed by rage, the blonde knight no longer sees any point in staying on his knees. He rises to attack, but he is too slow. A blade pierces his abdomen, and spears strike him before he can move. Han Sung closes in and leans right against his ear. In a chilling tone, Han Sung asks if the knight remembers his own death. That question triggers a vision in Han Sung's mind, an unforgettable scene of a blade being driven into a boy's back, and a blade driven into a boy's back, while a silent witness watches. It was Han Sung standing there at the execution of the hero. Now, holding the enemy's head, Han Sung repeats his terrifying question. Desperation masks the blonde knight's face as dark energy surges, binding him to a man who should have stayed dead. The darkness seizes his very body, stripping away any chance to fight back. Han Sung breathes a long sigh of relief. But on the distant battlefield, the carnage continues, unabated. The slaughter, the blonde commander watches his men fall one by one until the crushing reality of defeat finally sinks in. He can do nothing but watch the end. The right flank is crushed, and the R Knights have fallen. With the left flank broken, the black cavalry closes in, leaving the commander haunted by the boy's mocking smile. A desperate soldier begs for a command, but pride speaks louder than reason as the knight repeats in denial that this cannot be a defeat. In a final act of stubbornness, he orders his knights to hold their ground and never kneel. The men hesitate, knowing that pushing forward means total annihilation. They obey the supreme commander out of hatred, but chaos erupts as an enemy appears from the side, sending the blonde Philip into a panicked scream for protection. Deep down, Philip dreads this end. He wanted something more. As time passes and the sky turns orange, the battle concludes, having gone exactly according to Han Sung's plan. While the soldiers celebrate, a restrained Philip struggles against his captors, refusing to admit that his survival came at the cost of his men. He insists that even in defeat they are not broken, and as a commander, that was his duty. The young man, how much the man rejects? In a final desperate gambit, Philip proposes a duel to decide the battle's outcome. A soldier moves to intercept him, but Han Sung gestures to let him speak. Philip accepts the challenge with a crooked smile, and the blonde starts to draw his sword without a moment's hesitation. He charges forward to exploit an opening, banking on his rival's acceptance. He raises his blade, screaming for his opponent to die, but his strike never lands. Dark energy erupts from the ground, cutting the attack short. The shadows strike back, and Philip's expression shifts instantly from confidence to pure despair. His body drops, writhing on the ground as he begins screaming and begging to be saved. Han Sung watches the display, feeling only contempt in his gaze. The clash ends with the pathetic scream of a cowardly man, and sometime later, trumpets echo to mark the arrival of someone important. Young Master Han Sung returns victorious. The common folk celebrate the boy who completely annihilated the Order of the Knights of St. Madalena. Yet a hooded figure approaches, warning that this is no cause for celebration. The hooded figure is Cardinal Nikolai of the Church of the Goddess Sistina, and he claims that too much blood was spilled for this victory to be blessed. Nikolai warns that Han Sung's blade may soon be turned against his very allies. Ignoring the omen, Han Sung approaches a large door with Bale at his side, only to be interrupted by a sweet voice calling for her brother. It is Lise. Lise has grown quite a bit since they last met. The two embrace warmly, and Han Sung smiles, asking if she missed him. Shortly after, Helmut approaches to congratulate him on the victory in his first battle hand in hand with his sister. Han Sung enters the hall, where familiar faces await, his master Safia, Charlotte, and further ahead, his parents, Elena and Alan Saxon, watching him with pride. He feels their love. Placing a hand over his heart, Han Sung formally presents himself to deliver the victory report to the Duke. Alan Saxon responds with satisfaction, noting the battle was flawless, and thanks Bale for helping guide the heir. Elena, with a gentle smile, notes that the boy must be exhausted after returning from war, and allows him to rest before anything else. Han Sung thanks her, his face radiant. After so much time away, this place finally feels like home. Meanwhile, far away, Count Brandenburg seethes with rage as exhausted soldiers approach to deliver news of where Philip is. The news is grim. Sir Milva has fallen and the Order of Saint Madalena is gone. Many soldiers captured after ransom was demanded. With a sharp voice, the Count asks if this was a crushing defeat followed by a shameful retreat, threatening terrible consequences for those who failed. He orders the men to the cellar to beg for death, but time passes, and Han Sung's reputation grows. Known as the young Black Master who shows no mercy, he turns 11 years old. At his official ceremony, he is named Viscount of the Duchy of Saxon. This sudden honor makes his eyes wide, because the eyes go wide. This title carries real. Han Sung is overjoyed to be granted the authority to act as the Lord's representative, but his gratitude quickly turns to business as he prepares to make a sudden decision. Whispers about Han Sung's recent battle echo through the halls, claiming the young Black Master spared no one. Some knights fell victim to a cruelty that would not go unnoticed by the goddess church, and they will certainly not be pleased. Han Sung wants to pilgrimage to the papal territory of the goddess Sistina to face his reputation head-on. Alan Saxon listens with a closed expression, curious if there is another motive behind this sudden choice. Han Sung confirms his true goal. He will present a proposal that cannot be refused, and in the process, on top of that, will seize forbidden grimoires. But his ambition is fueled by a recent terror. Days ago, while sleeping, forgotten memories began clawing their way back to the surface. A massive skull suddenly appeared in his vision, demanding to know if he remembered their deaths. The vision brought a violent pain that echoed through his very soul. Han Sung wakes up abruptly, breathing hard. Han Sung presses a hand to his chest. That was no ordinary dream. It was something deeper, tied to the darkest corners of his mind, forced open the moment he reached the third magic circle. Instead of control, he found only a profound loneliness. Just as a knight masters his sword, an exceptional mage requires a grimoire to truly harness his potential. Meanwhile, a carriage travels far from the kingdom. At the border between Barony Greenbelt and Barony Parker, the edge of the empire meets the central zone. In these lands, a fallen baron has resorted to banditry to survive after the war. Suddenly, arrows cut through the air, narrowly missing the nervous horses. Armed bandits appear to block the road, demanding to know what the travelers are doing there, claiming it is common knowledge that a toll must be paid to cross noble lands. The young man remains unconcerned, having already prepared a sum for the bandits. One of the men smirks, takes the bag, and realizes it's filled with gold far too generous for a simple toll. The bandits let the carriage pass and begin to laugh, dreaming of a bigger score, but their peace is short-lived. Suddenly, a voice thunders from above. An arrogant baron blocks their path, demanding payment for crossing his territory. Han Sung responds calmly, noting that the toll was already paid to the subordinates, and that double charging is illegal. The bandits immediately play dumb, claiming they have never seen these travelers before, turning the accusation back on the carriage occupants. The baron threatens their lives, demanding every coin they possess. One of his soldiers adds with pride that they stand before the legendary hero of the turning point, a survivor of the Black and White War. The noble takes a closer look, and his eyes widen as he recognizes the man standing before him. As Bale pulls back his hood, it becomes clear that these travelers are far from ordinary. The baron tries to regain his composure, convincing himself he can still win against just two people. With forced confidence, he orders the archers to ready their arrows. Without hesitation, the baron points his finger and commands the attack. The arrows cut through the air at full speed, and while the protagonist remains perfectly calm, his eyes stay fixed on the projectiles closing in. Then, the swordsman acts, deflecting every single arrow with precise, masterful movements. He declares he will carry out the order with everything he has. Shocked by this sudden display of skill, the archers freeze in disbelief, but the guardian is already moving forward. The first strike lands with lethal precision, slicing through a soldier's arm as the onslaught continues. Hesitation, taking on the entire group alone. Watching the slaughter, the baron realizes he is truly powerless. As the young man approaches, the nobleman finds he has no choice left but to drop to his knees and beg for mercy. The protagonist simply looks down at him and asks coldly why he deserves it. Han Sung continues his journey, carving a path through corrupt nobles, fallen knights, and bandits across the continent. A few weeks later, vessel cuts through calm waters, carrying him and his companion toward the grand constellation city of Quest, a territory belonging to the goddess Sistina. Han Sung gazes at the city with pure contempt. This trip isn't a pilgrimage, but a mission of judgment. Han Sung and his companion approach the city entrance, guarded by heavily armed soldiers. As they enter, they find a magnificent hall where divine light filters through stained glass, and imposing statues watch in silence. Waiting for them at the center is His Eminence, Cardinal Nikolai, a sixth-circle white mage, and one of the 12 top clerics of the Goddess Church. The clergyman maintains a calm expression, noting that he has heard news of the recent battle and the many lives lost. The cardinal laments the loss of the Santa Madalena brothers, but Han Sung merely offers a calm, hollow agreement. He claims his poor judgment caused too much suffering, and so he has come to the papal territory on a pilgrimage to seek redemption and reach the goddess through prayer. The cardinal watches the boy intently, sensing the heavy weight of war upon him, making it easy to dismiss him as just an 11-year-old boy. To the clergyman, everything seems much simpler through that lens. Nikolai serenely declares that the goddess's mercy is open to all and no sin is beyond forgiveness. After a tense silence, Han Sung asks if any sin is truly unforgivable. The clergyman confirms the mercy is absolute, and Han Sung raises his gaze to demand if that is why the apostles sold the goddess's country to the empire. Silence falls like a blade. Startled, the cardinal laughs off the question as an absurd joke, but Han Sung refuses to back down. He begins to reveal the truth. Before the state was forcibly annexed, 12 cardinals had convinced the former pope to accept the deal. Nikolai witnessed the betrayal of the former leader, who was eliminated after refusing to surrender. Through the treachery of the cardinals in the White Tower, the pope was brought down by the empire's hunting dogs, and Han Sung asks if that sin was ever forgiven. The clergyman's calm mask shatters, replaced by clenched teeth and fury. His composure vanishes. Fuming with anger, the cardinal snaps back at the visitor. The conspirators pressured the former pope to accept the deal. A silence falls as Han Sung realizes that killing the duke's representative won't solve anything. Deep down, he suspects the duke is as blind to this conspiracy as anyone else. The cardinal closes his eyes and a heavy luminous energy begins to radiate from his body. He demands to know the boy's true intent. Han Sung doesn't hesitate, speaking of the secret library beneath where the church's forbidden books are sealed. Killing a mere representative of the duke, Han Sung descends the dark stairs, his footsteps echoing through the oppressive silence. He moves forward, nearing the mouth of the Hell Library. The terms are strict. He may enter and leave, but only one grimoire can be taken. In exchange, he must keep the church's secrets forever. As the heir to the Black Duke, Han Sung accepts the risk without hesitation. He prepares to make his oath. He swears it in the name of Satis. As the two join hands, a pure white energy rises around them. The cardinal demands their very hearts as collateral, binding the pact with Gaius, the pride of the White Tower. There is no turning back now. If either breaks the agreement, the contract will destroy their hearts, with the pact sealed. Han Sung continues alone until he reaches the gate of hell. A grim warning is carved upon the door. Those who enter must abandon all hope. Han Sung places his hand against the cold surface. As if responding to his presence, the gate swings open on its own. Beyond the gate lies a vast dungeon, where the so-called forbidden books are actually sources of calamity. For a mage, finding a powerful grimoire is as essential as a knight's sword. Deep within the corridors, Han Sung is suddenly confronted by the Guardians. These creatures, made of corpses, prove that those who preach light are just as desperate for power. The Guardians lunge without warning, but Han Sung reacts instantly, driving them all back with magic to press further into the dark. Here, he can finally use his full power, and that freedom drives him forward. With a decisive motion, the boy grips his dagger, and Han Sung slices his palm, letting the dark ritual blood flow onto the stone. In a firm voice, he invokes his lineage and an ancient power etched into the dungeon floor. He calls upon the black goat of the forest of 1,000 descendants, demanding it fulfill the contract. With the very environment reacts to the summons as a distorted voice rises, declaring that this fluid carries the power of a true mage, and more voices. Multiple entities manifest at once, all fighting for the chance to claim him. Suddenly, the very atmosphere shifts, becoming heavy and suffocating. A hooded figure appears, offering a pact to bring a festival of death to all his enemies. Looking out at the warped landscape, Han Sung begins to realize exactly where he is. The mental world of Han Sung finds himself within the mental landscape of the Book of Massacre, a forbidden tome fueled by endless, cruel magic. But he refuses to submit to its power. Instead, he commands the entity before him to stand aside. He isn't interested in what this book has to offer. The entity rages at the rejection, but Han Sung just smiles without any sign of fear. making it clear he is not the one. As his dark and dense energy begins to rise, the environment itself reacts to his presence. This realm is nothing more than a world inside a book, and it has no way of invading his own mind. The scenery is consumed by a heavy purple void that mirrors the mind of one who has seen true horrors. The creature falls into despair, unable to comprehend how a mere child is overpowering it. Han Sung responds coldly, "The lives lost to this book's master are nothing compared to the countless souls he has already witnessed perish." Panicking, the entity charges with everything it has, refusing to be consumed. The entity's body begins to come apart, disintegrating fragment by fragment until nothing remains. As the void recedes, the environment returns to a state of unstable reality, where the very walls seem on the verge of collapse. Amidst the carnage, a sweet voice rises as a girl with long hair and goat horns appears, calling him brother. She has been alone for a long time, and she asks, with a curious look, if he'd like to play. Han Sung watches her in silence, recognizing the threat immediately. He knows exactly what she is, a creation of the immortal Duke Frederick. Even a great power once sacrificed its own daughter to push past the limits of death, and that is why the avatar takes the form of a child, but her presence is anything but human. To secure his power, Han Sung makes an offer to form a contract with her, but she accepts only on one condition: she wants to see his world. The deal is struck, and instantly both are transported into the depths of the protagonist's inner space. The girl looks around, enchanted by the sight, and she admits she likes her new brother even more. But then, something catches her attention. In the shadows of this realm, frightened figures linger, including the unexpected Cardinal Nikolai. Their presence reveals the impossible. No one believed the young man could actually obtain the grimoire, so the clergyman has come to investigate what happens in this forbidden place. Han Sung smiles faintly, realizing the man couldn't trust his own deal and came himself to kill him. It is a fatal mistake. In this world of darkness, there could be no worse place for those of the light to fight a battle. A horned girl asks her brother if she can devour the intruders, but he coldly tells her he won't deal with the consequences if she gets sick. After being trapped in a frozen void, she smiles at the prospect of a feast. Desperate, Nikolai begins to pray to the Holy Spirit. An intense light erupts as soldiers join his prayer, their backs tearing open as wings emerge and their bodies transform into divine, angelic figures. Han Sung watches in silence as danger grazes him with every strike. A blade nearly catches Han Sung, but he counters with dark projectiles, though the creatures dodge his magic with frightening precision. Suddenly, Cardinal Nikolai raises his crucifix and prepares to speak. Han Sung is still limited to the third circle, and the grimoire's true power remains out of reach for such immature hands. The horned girl covers her ears, clearly struggling against the sacred energy. But something inside her shifts. Irritation replaces her pain as violent dark energy leaks from her body, sprouting lethal tentacles that shred through the advancing angels in a single bloody motion. The darkness reforms instantly to lash out, scattering the holy warriors. Then a distorted voice echoes through the chaos. The voice commands them to praise, causing the angels' faces to warp and their skin to swell with pulsating veins. They are being consumed from within by something deeply disturbing. Before everyone's eyes, the sacred forms of the angels twist into grotesque, unrecognizable shapes. The horned girl lets out a childlike laugh, claiming she has waited so long to savor this smell, and her tentacles advance without mercy, tearing through the winged creatures one after another. This entity is a predator, capable of devouring even angels, and the boy who summoned her is no mere prodigy. Standing there is something far darker, something akin to the devil's own son. Han Sung watches it all calmly, and he can only calmly recall the ominous words once spoken by Cardinal Nikolai. The contract offers no protection from hell, and realizing he's trapped, the broken cardinal begs for mercy. Han Sung approaches the desperate man and demands a price for his survival. Desperate to live, Nikolai promises him everything: wealth, position, and the absolute power of the church. A predatory smile touches the young man's face as he listens to the offer, and with a terrifyingly gentle expression, he reaches out to claim everything the man possesses. Meanwhile, the horned girl smiles with an unsettling sweetness. She says she enjoyed playing and that she will be waiting for her new brother, demanding to know if Han Sung feels any fear toward her. Han Sung answers calmly that he isn't, but secretly, he knows the danger of his own existence. He cannot afford to be careless. His power is something he hasn't fully mastered yet, a force that must never be used recklessly. The girl's tentacles wrap around him, asking if they'll ever play like this again. Han Sung promises her that when they meet again, they can play as much as she wants, but the vision shatters. The chaos of hell vanishes, replaced by the cold stone of a library dungeon as the girl whispers that she'll be waiting. Suddenly, a new era begins. The Saxon heir receives a grand pardon from Cardinal Nikolai. This pardon serves as a historic alliance between the church and the duchy, signaling a massive shift in power. As time passes, Han Sung no longer travels as a mere pilgrim, but as a feared master whose sword leaves no one standing in his path. Months later at the training grounds, Helmut approaches Charlotte Orhart. With firm composure, Helmut asks if she is ready to begin, and at that very moment, a purple energy begins to radiate from her body. A vibrant, dense aura envelops her as her concentration peaks, coating her blade in a dark, violet power that feels far beyond the ordinary. Around her, the soldiers watch in excitement, while Helmut smiles at her extraordinary talent. But the training session is interrupted by a sudden, commanding presence. Han Sung approaches Charlotte with a serious gaze, demanding her attention. By the honor of her lord, her family, and everything she must protect. Han Sung rests the tip of his sword upon her shoulders in a solemn gesture, and asks her to swear to protect the weak and punish evil. Charlotte's voice rises resolute as she swears her loyalty. In the name of House Saxon, Han Sung officially names her his knight, Sir Charlotte. The two walk side by side, a new bond forged in steel. Han Sung asks if she truly believes they can succeed, but Charlotte's conviction is unshakable. She explains that she chose the Saxon family's sword because it is what shaped him into the man he is today. By choosing the heavy great sword over her easier rapier, she proves her talent far exceeds his expectations. But the weight of her choice is about to be tested. Han Sung shifts the conversation to a darker reality. A massive orc army is gathering beyond the Demon King's territory, led by their very war chief. A massive war is gathering its strength, and Han Sung wants Charlotte to fight, not just as an ally, but as his true knight. She responds with solemn conviction, promising to be the sword that protects her lord with all her honor. Han Sung smiles faintly, knowing she will be a formidable ally. Forces, and all that. Meanwhile, the Duke reviews grim reports as a massive orc army descends from the Darklands. Informants fear a great demonic migration, noting that the previous invasion was only a small fraction of what remains out there. In response, the Duke summons the Black Tower and all Northern Lords to prepare for a war on a scale never seen before. Turning his serious gaze toward his son, the Duke realizes the time has finally come to teach him on the battlefield. In the Black Duke's underground workshop, Han Sung begins his first necromancy lesson. When asked the difference between a death knight and a simple undead, Han Sung compares them to knights and common soldiers. Alan shakes his head, noting that raw strength is only part of the answer. The true distinction, he explains, lies in the mastery of sword aura. Before them lies the lifeless body of a fallen knight who swore his service to the Saxon family even in death. With a snap of Alan's fingers, a dark aura surges through the corpse, awakening something long dormant. Alan explains that a knight's former rank dictates the power of the Death Knight raised from them, reminding Han Sung that true soldiers are defined by pride. Reminding his son that whether living or dead, knights are defined by their pride. As they descend into the depths of the dungeon to uncover a much greater secret. As they descend, the sound of their footsteps echoes through the emptiness, heavy with a silence that makes Han Sung wonder just how deep this descent goes. Then Alan breaks the quiet, asking if he knows the name of the immortal Duke Frederick, the founder of the Saxon family. The name hits Han Sung instantly, since that man's grimoire is carved into his very heart. Playing along, he claims he has only read about the legend in books, but Alan's eyes remain cold. He calls Frederick a monster who would sacrifice his own daughter for power. Therefore, Han Sung is about to witness the true darkness of the ancient era he was born into. Stepping through a violet portal that only the pure-blooded may cross, Han Sung's eyes go wide. Before them stands a silent crowd of knights in black armor. Alan reveals the chilling truth. The immortal Duke discovered a way to command the dead without the constant need for mana. For generations, the Saxon leaders have built an army of the dead, and Alan carries that legacy of the Death Order even today. Han Sung clenches his teeth as the weight of his heritage finally makes sense. His father's lessons on willpower and determination resonate deeply. He realizes the family's isolation and the fear they inspire aren't accidents, but a choice to embrace a power far too dark to be accepted by the world. For a moment, the contradiction is almost nauseating. Facing the silent armored legion, the Duke extends his arm and declares this darkness to be the shield that will protect everything they have. Han Sung feels his heart pounding against his chest, but his answer remains steady. He says yes, that he has been ready for this moment from the very beginning. No matter how impure or dark the power, he will accept it willingly. He raises his hand, and the mana begins to swirl. Han Sung's focus is absolute as he attempts a feat beyond mere spellcasting, controlling a corpse. The dead body responds, gripping its greatsword in a solemn stance before unleashing a flurry of precision strikes with overwhelming force. Alan watches the display in silence, remarking that Han Sung's mana concentration is absurdly refined. Even Han Sung admits he still cannot control the Death Knight without constant mana supply. The training shifts as dark energy fills the room, summoning aggressive goblin corpses to charge the undead under Han Sung's command. The knight strikes with a clean sweeping motion, obliterating every enemy in sight. Watching from the sidelines, Sophia feels a strange tightness in her chest as she observes her student. The elf master recalls the day the boy first expressed affection, but she saw only the dark, hollow world within him. Sophia notices his hesitation, prompting Han Sung to ask if she could still care for him once he embraces his family's darkest side. And heavy silence settles between them. As rumors of Han Sung's victories spread across the empire, Sophia's thoughts drift toward the dark reputation growing around her disciple. Sophia makes it clear that he will never be alone before she gently releases his face and clears her throat to break the tension. She tries to push for the lesson, but Han Sung can't let the moment go. Instead, he pulls her into a tight embrace, offering a heartfelt confession that promises a warmth capable of melting even his deepest cold. Meanwhile, the peace is shattered as colorful banners rise against the sky. To prepare for the coming demonic migration, the lords of the north are gathering in the Duke's territory, where a knight in armor steps forward. Kenneth of Balderburg, a mid-ranking lord under House Saxon, steps forward with respect, leading a massive force of knights and infantry. He brings hundreds of soldiers to the Duke's territory. As more arrive, ambitious young nobles vie for the attention of the heir, like Bess of the Gale family, who pledges his life for the glory of the battlefield. Even noblewomen push through the crowds, approaching Han Sung with charming smiles, stunned by how mature and impressive the young boy has become. But the mood shifts when a purple-haired young man steps forward. Demanding to see the strength of the aura with his own eyes, he cuts straight to the point. A gray-haired man quickly tries to apologize for the young man's insolence, but the tension is palpable. Han Sung raises his hand, demanding silence from the gathering crowd. Standing before Han Sung is Yones, the second son of Baron Kenneth. Han Sung asks if this confrontation is a direct test of his capabilities. Yones responds with respect, but he refuses to back down. He has heard all the legends regarding Han Sung is no ordinary soldier, but the Empire's martial genius. With a slight smile, Han Sung confirms that Sir Yones truly leads a group of 100 mercenaries built from scratch, a claim the man confirms. As the second son of a baron, Yones has no inheritance to rely on, forced to earn his worth with a sword. For Han Sung, this is more than just a duel, it is a vital opportunity. Accepting the challenge, the two move apart in the hall, and the mood shifts before the coming war. Yones adjusts his stance. Han Sung warns that his blade is unlike any other, but Yones claims he has already heard tales of the Shadow Sword. Then Han Sung. The command is given, firm and unwavering. Yones must use his full strength and aura without hesitation, and the swordsman accepts. A purple aura begins to swirl around his body. He is not yet a true full aura knight, but his foundation is solid. Sensing this, Han Sung decides to respond in kind. Dark energy rises from the ground, taking shape into a shadow sword. This heavy pressure shifts the very air in the hall. Han Sung demands that his opponent give him everything he has. The duel ignites like a lightning strike. Yones charges forward, his blade slicing, his blade cutting through the air at blinding speed, narrowly missing Han Sung's face. Han Sung dodges by a hair, eyes tracking the relentless, powerful strikes. Inside, Yones is consumed by a single thought. His opponent has always had everything since birth. The tension reaches its breaking point as the swords clash with a crash. Driven by a desperate need to prove his worth, Yones, a purple-haired young man, charges straight ahead and drives a direct strike toward Han Sung's face. He thinks he has found an opening.
But as the blades...
The protagonist, Yones' momentum leaves him completely exposed to a sudden counterattack. The momentum shifts instantly. Han Sung's sword is inches from Yones' face, yet no blow lands. Instead, a long shadow stretches across the ground, and blades made of darkness erupt from it. Han Sung smiles with absolute confidence before flicking his hand, sending the shadow blades surging forward. Yones narrowly dodges the attack, his aura flickering around his body. Seeing his worth, Han Sung decides the boy is a worthy tool to help him make a name for himself. He taunts him, announcing that he won't move an inch and tells Yones to come to him. Fueled by hatred, the knight leaps forward, swearing the boy will regret his mistake. The blades clash once more, but Han Sung refuses to yield an inch. Around them, the onlookers watch in tense silence, realizing the eldest son of House Saxon is proving himself a true warrior. Han Sung presses forward, taunting his opponent with a challenge. A burst of dark energy streaks toward Yones, but Han Sung realizes his opponent isn't even trying to land a hit. He's only trying to impress the northern lords. Insulted, Jans pours every ounce of strength into his charge, giving his absolute all in a desperate attempt to overcome the boy's genius. But even total determination cannot stop the truth. Han Sung's blade shatters Jan's sword, leaving the young man kneeling in defeat. Han Sung is left alone with his thoughts. Perhaps his sudden mastery stems from the Black Goat's book, because during the fight, the entire world seemed to slow down. The shadow sword became an extension of his own body, while his shadow blades responded like sentient tentacles. To show his growing power, Han Sung turns his aura into shards of shadow, firing them toward his opponent merely to make a demonstration. He looks toward the hall with a challenging gaze, asking if anyone else dares to step up. The response is immediate. A sword tip thuds into the ground beside him as a knight bows, pledging his loyalty to the young lord. Han Sung remembers his father's old warning. That fear ensures loyalty. Watching the knight, the boy realizes it is the plain truth. Later, amidst the drinking and talk of nobles, one guest remarks that Jones doesn't look well. Han Sung's rival answers in disappointment, noting that no matter how hard he swings his sword, he will never reach the young lord's level. But the thought of the eldest son of House Saxon makes his blood boil. Irritated by the unfairness, he tells his companions to stop questioning and just drink. The group gathers around a bonfire. A man named Jones scoffs that the noblewomen at the event were all vying for a child's attention to him. People are all the same once their titles are stripped away. With a crooked smile, Jones mocks Han Sung's ability to handle the female attention, only to realize that the young man is standing right there. The men jump up in alarm. Ignoring the tension, Han Sung calmly sits by the fire and demands a drink. As the liquid flows, Han Sung asks if Jones resents the world. To him, the world is fundamentally unfair and absurd because, to Han Sung, talent and environment are fixed truths, elements of a world that no one can truly control. He offers a friendly gesture, telling Jonas that no man can change the fate he was born with. However, Han Sung has grown fond of the mercenary company, and he wonders if they might like to prepare for the coming battle, learning everything from basic swordsmanship to the complex methods of aura cultivation. The cruelty lies in the timing. The boy who had shown Jonas more than Han Sung explains that Jones is simply a man looking for a chance in an unfair world, one that the mercenary finally finds. In that moment, the weight of injustice seems to vanish. Much later, dawn breaks over the Saxon manor, where a mountain range stands as the final barrier against the Demon King's territory. The defensive line is barely holding as the northern lords pull back from the 9th fortress. They burn everything they cannot carry before retreating. If they can hold their position while falling back, the enemy will reach the upper Saxon River exhausted. There, the soldiers can annihilate them. The time has come to deploy. The field army, the Duke orders the lords to be notified and the troops to prepare to march. Before anyone disperses, Alan Saxon asks to speak with Han Sung privately. The Duke plans to place the mobile strike force entirely under his son's command, leaving Han Sung to lead the army alone when the large-scale conflict begins. However, Sophia has decided to stay by his side, a choice that catches the young man off guard. It is unusual for an elf from the Blue Magic Tower to intervene in worldly affairs, yet Alan recognizes her as House Saxon's greatest advisor. Is far more than just a mere worldly dispute. Even so, Han Sung wonders if this is truly her own choice. Confidence is high, but Han Sung has one more request before the march begins. He asks for the ghost swordswoman to be assigned to his unit, and Charlotte Orlhart steps forward. Putting on her helmet with unwavering certainty, Charlotte declares herself the guardian knight who will stand beside the famous young master. Han Sung sees a true knight standing before him instead of a little girl, yet a nagging sense of unease remains. Place the mobile strike. Recalling the sinister gaze of a knight, Han Sung decides to make a promise with Charlotte that she will do whatever it takes to stay alive. But Charlotte insists that risking her life for her lord is a knight's true duty. Han Sung challenges her definition of that duty, knowing true service means never betraying her lord's trust by dying needlessly on a battlefield not made for her. As the orc horde begins its southward march, the Saxon forces prepare for war. Han Sung rides toward the upper Saxon River, flanked by Charlotte, Sophia, and his knights. Realizing that from this moment on, Sophia is more than just a mentor. The moon begins to fade. As they reach the river camp there, Han Sung finds Sophia with a heavy expression and demands to know why she accepted his father's proposal. The elf simply says she is following a calling. Han Sung shares a quiet moment with her, receiving a promise that she will stay by his side. Han Sung smiles and thanks her, but the peace is shattered by a sudden violent noise. The orcs have already reached the camp, launching an ambush before the soldiers can even react. Chaos erupts as the monsters make their first move. Anxious, Bale rushes to the young lord's side, urging him to act before the orcs can cross the river and advance directly into their lines. Han Sung orders Bail to take 4 battalions and launch a raid on the front, killing every orc before they can form a bridge. He will lead the remaining 2 battalions to strike the rear. Bail shouts for his soldiers to prevent a single monster from reaching the riverbank. A rain of arrows descends upon the advancing orcs, and Han Sung's knights move to follow his strategy. As the young lord hopes Bail can hold the line, a sudden realization strikes while they ride along the path. But a wolf breaks through the formation, leaping into the archer line. It sinks its teeth into a soldier's shoulder with brutal force. The scream echoes across the battlefield as the orcs finally push toward the bridge. Finally reach the bridge. The orders are clear. Expose them, one by one, and let none through. If this long march has worn the enemy's rear units thin, they must be at their limit. A soldier falls. A massive orc raises its axe and stares down the remaining men. Then an explosion rips through the enemy lines. Han Sung has reached his position.
The soldiers show no mercy.
Han Sung readies his shadow shot, sweeping the battlefield with a burst of energy projectiles that tear through the orcs. The troops gain confidence watching their lord lead the charge, but Han Sung doesn't notice. Notice the orc closing in from behind until Charlotte appears. Charlotte strikes down the monster before it can react, assuring Han Sung that she has the situation handled. As the cavalry pulls away from the wolf-mounted orcs, the battle begins to shift. Nearby, Sophia is also pushing her magic to the limit. She warns that if they delay, the orcs will reorganize their formation, but their numbers remain overwhelming. The mission's objective is already met, and a total victory is no longer the priority. However, amidst the stampede of wolves, there is a horse, carrying a hooded figure whose palm glows with mounting fire. Sophia shouts for Han Sung to get clear, and at the same time, she begins charging an ice spell, launching it toward the threat. A massive barrier forms, freezing everything in its path, but the hooded figure's blazing attack flies straight toward the blockade. The barrier holds. The barrier holds for a moment, before the flames tear through the ice and incinerate a soldier, leaving nothing behind. Han Sung watches in horror as the flame's true nature is revealed. It's a purifier from the Red Magic Tower, a pyromancer specialized in nothing but destruction. These combat mages exist with a single deadly purpose: to burn the enemies of the Empire and the tower. As Sophia and Han Sung realize they are the target, Han Sung orders his men to scatter to survive. But there is no clean escape, and Han Sung knows he may have to reveal his secret power. Before he can make a choice, a voice calls out to him. Sophia rides up, demanding he dismounts so she can fulfill her duty as his master. Han Sung meets her gaze heavily and pulls his horse to a halt. Calling over a soldier to order the cavalry to keep moving. Charlotte is to deliver the message to the Duke immediately. Charlotte resists the command, insisting her duty is to protect the young lord. But Han Sung's order is final, forcing the reluctant noblewoman to turn her horse and ride off. With escape off the table, Sophia asks if he was trying to run, but Han Sung makes his stance clear. He will never leave his master behind. Realizing he has already included her in his calculations, Sophia prepares to fight alongside him. Suddenly, an orc-riding wolf charges fiercely at them, but Sophia reacts instantly, conjuring a torrent of ice crystals. A piercing howl echoes as the magic freezes the creatures mid-charge, trapping the orcs and their mounts in ice. The threat is only beginning, as Han Sung warns that they are facing a blue elder, a sixth circle mage. Anyone standing in their way had better be ready. Han Sung refuses to back down, demanding to know why the Red Magic Tower is conspiring with demons. The hooded man sneers that Han Sung is nothing but fuel for their fire, hurling a massive fireball toward him. Sophia leaps forward to protect her student and unleashes Blue Dissonance, a spell that unravels the incoming magic in an instant. With the energy vanished, Han Sung seizes the moment and orders the Saxon knights to advance immediately. The knights charge, carving through the monsters one by one. Watching from a distance, the Duke realizes that what the young mages are facing is far beyond any ordinary battle. He sees only a true abyss of chaos, fear, and contempt. He warns them not to cling to victory or defeat, but to let death become fuel. They must carry the fear inside, but never let it take control. Alan orders the mages to learn from this carnage, turning the horror into the strength they need to shape a new future. He then declares that it is time to send the children to the crossing point. Eris nods in agreement. Suddenly, Charlotte rushes in, her face twisted in distress. She pulls off her helmet to warn them that the young lord is in grave danger. Chaos erupts as horses charge toward the front lines, where Han Sung's troops are already struggling against an enemy pyromancer who launches a devastating torrent of fire at the knights. Han Sung and Sophia react instantly, clashing their magic against the flames to create a colossal ice barrier that halts the cavalry's advance. Seizing the opening, Han Sung prepares to strike back by shattering the frozen wall with his technique, Shadow Magnum. He fires lethal, high-speed projectiles meant to kill on impact, but the enemies are still standing. Running, Han Sung realizes his Shadow Magnum was useless. The enemies raised a fire aura to neutralize the projectiles. That flame armor is no ordinary equipment, as it even withstood Sephia's magic moments before. A lancer closes in, shouting that the pyromancer's flames will end Han Sung's life right there. But the hooded figures concentrate their power, and triggering a brutal counterattack that causes the lancer's weapons to spontaneously combust. As the purifiers advance on Sephia, Han Sung intercepts them with precise, dark energy projectiles. One hooded figure falls, giving Han Sung a chance to demand their true objective. The enemy simply laughs, claiming that soon the entire world will be consumed by flames, and as his body begins to shift, he declares they will rise from the ashes. Han Sung realizes the horror of the situation. The pyromancer is using a self-destruction spell, turning his own armor into a furnace to immolate himself. He screams for Sophia to retreat, but the enemy's countdown has already reached 0. The world vanishes in white light. A massive explosion tears through the area, leaving a wide trail of devastation in its wake. As the dust settles, Han Sung struggles to rise, finding Sephia lying beside him.
Miraculously alive because the ice barrier held against the impact that knocked down even the Night Raven Knights.
But the silence is short-lived, as another pyromancer appears on the battlefield. Seeing the young lord still standing, the mage lunges directly at him. The attack is blistering and fast, leaving Han Sung with barely a second to react, yet he pushes forward with everything he has. With a precise strike, he cuts the opponent down, watching as the second mage combusts just like the first. As he fights, a flood of memories rushes back. The pain, the torture, and the horrific modifications he once endured. He stares down the next foe with lethal intent, resolved to make them pay for everything. Meanwhile, Sophia manages to struggle back to her feet. Cries of agony echo across the battlefield as the chaos unfolds. Amidst the slaughter, Han Sung finds himself standing completely alone against the pyromancers. Driven by pure instinct, the boy charges into the fray, causing his enemy to burst into flames and explode like a bomb, incinerating the knights standing nearby. The very soldiers sworn to protect the Duke are torn apart in a devastating storm of fire. The pyromancers laugh, but their flames fail to even singe him as the survivors watch in disbelief. While the enemies realize self-destruction is useless, they desperately scream for a coordinated strike against Han Sung. One attacker rushes him, only to receive a fatal blow. Every movement Han Sung makes releases years of pent-up suffering. He turns that agony into lethal blades with every strike.
The pyromancers attempt to retaliate,
But to them, the young man standing is no mere enemy, but the incarnation of vengeance. Han Sung coldly informs the survivors that their mission is a failure, but one pyromancer dares to challenge his claim of victory after all that blood was spilled. Even with the Black Tower fallen, the enemy shows no fear. These warriors have already accepted death, having even sacrificed their own bodies for it. This suicidal resolve catches Han Sung off guard. He realizes he is facing enemies prepared to die for the cause. Suddenly, an enemy charges, bursting into flames to trigger a deadly explosion right in Han Sung's face. Despite the blast, Han Sung remains standing, and to everyone's shock, the purifier who should have been destroyed survives as well. Then a figure appears on horseback, approaching with overwhelming authority. It is House Saxon, the Duke of House Saxon, arriving to protect his son. He calmly tells the pyromancers that while accepting death is easy, having the courage to truly live is the greater challenge. Furious at his words, the enemies charge the newcomer. A massive explosion erupts from the clash, yet the Duke emerges completely unharmed. Staring at the survivor coldly, the Duke asks if he do not understand. Alan simply refused to grant them permission to die. In his presence, there was no path to death by their own will. Purple energy begins to coalesce in his hand. He launches an abominable curse, a fusion of dark magic directly at the remaining purifiers, causing their bodies to melt away. House Saxon declares he won't even ask why they betrayed him to side with the orcs. After all, they've already thrown their lives away. As their punishment, he decrees they shall live forever in that monstrous form forever. Meanwhile, a wounded soldier calls out to the young lord with his final breath. Even on the brink of death, the warrior begs to fulfill his final duty as a Knight of the Night Crow. Han Sung approaches to lift the dying warrior's body, promising him that both he and the entire Saxon house will never forget his devotion. The soldier's arm falls limp. In silence, the warrior finally takes his leave of this world. The Duke approaches his son, acknowledging the heavy losses, but Han Sung offers no excuses for the carnage. Instead, Han Sung confesses his failure as a commander. admitting he should have retreated rather than leading the Saxon knights to their deaths. The Duke softly urges him not to bear that crushing weight alone. He reminds Han Sung that he fought alongside Sifia to face dozens of orc knights and purifiers, facing impossible odds. The end. He did everything possible. Even in death, the knights demand to fulfill their duty, their presence haunting the battlefield. Suddenly, a fallen soldier begins to rise, prompting Han Sung to ask the Duke to let the knights finish their mission. Meanwhile, far from the battlefield, the legendary Red Magic Tower looms in the distance. Inside the bedroom of Marquess Ori, a red-haired man and a blonde woman share a moment of unexpected quiet. With a gentle smile, the man asks the girl if she had pleasant dreams. She admits she might still be dreaming, for being alone with the most beautiful man in the empire is a rare honor. The man's words are a cryptic invitation to see the truth for herself. As they lean in for an intense kiss, the moment is shattered by a sudden jarring sensation. Crimson liquid begins to drip, and a sharp metallic taste floods her mouth. She realizes with horror what is happening. But the man is already there. Catching her chin with a cold, cynical gaze, he asks in an unsettling tone if the drink is not to her liking. The battle rages on as they continue to clash against the remaining knights. Helmet stands out, dodging every heavy strike from the chaos. Amidst the carnage, Han Sung orders Helmet to fall back, declaring that defeating these orcs is his responsibility alone. Without hesitation, Han Sung advances alongside his troops, while a single knight charges straight for the enemy commander. Helmet watches the scene, stunned by the sight of the undead advancing with surgical precision, facing to meet the orc with terrifying efficiency. Suddenly, the creature's eyes ignite with light, as it unleashes a shriek powerful enough to shatter the ranks nearby. Helmet orders an immediate retreat, realizing the threat is far beyond their control. But Han Sung ignores the command and keeps moving forward. Han Sung knows his strength is still insufficient, and he must become even more terrifying to win. He refuses the entity from the goat book when she offers her help. Revealing such a power in public would be far too risky for him right now. The small girl simply hugs him warmly, promising to never do anything her master hates, if only he will play with her. Suddenly, Han Sung's dark energy begins to swell, surging toward the orc. A sinister, even with the shadows rising beneath him, the war chief charges forward without fear, only to be brought down by the onslaught. Han Sung activates Shadow Stalker, landing a devastating strike directly on the orc's forehead. Shadows erupt from the ground, piercing the beast's body from every direction at once. With this victory, Han Sung earns a fearsome new title, the Black Prince, the man who crushed the Orc Order. Meanwhile, back at the Black Magic Tower, the Duke questions Ceres about the Purifiers. She reveals their investigation into the enemy mines failed, as the captives' memories had already been wiped. Memory erasure magic was used to hide their secrets. It is clear these men were prepared to be captured, knowing Han Sung would split from the main force to lead the cavalry. Eris asks if Alan suspects anyone, but his answer is chilling. The culprits could be nothing but true monsters. She wonders if extremists from the Black Tower are conspiring with the Crimson Magic Tower. Alan explains that during the Empire's Unification War, there was an unofficial unit of mages from both towers conducting joint investigations. Even after they were dissolved, some extremists continued to seek forbidden truths. Eris asks if the winds of purgatory may blow again, and the Duke agrees that such a conspiracy is likely. There lie the brave souls who followed his father to the very end. As the heir, Han Sung feels the immense weight of their sacrifice. He turns to his father and asks how the command to raise the undead actually works. While acknowledging Han Sung's potential, the Duke questions if the boy can ever escape the darkness that once trapped him. He tells Han Sung that once he surpasses him, the entire Dark Army will naturally belong to him. The meaning is clear. To claim that power, Han Sung must first defeat the greatest dark mage on the continent, his own father. Without a moment's hesitation, Han Sung challenges his father to a duel. The Duke agrees, but Han Sung demands his father fight with everything he has. To bolster his strength, Han Sung raises 2 Black Knights to assist him. The man accepts the terms, daring his son to bring it his worst. Alan watches the dark enchantment with interest, effortlessly dodging the creature's relentless strikes. Han Sung prepares his next move. Han Sung activates Shadow Stalker, launching a coordinated assault intended to leave no escape. The blades surge forward, all aimed directly at the Duke's face. But the knights suddenly freeze mid-swing. The Duke calmly explains that in a duel between dark mages, control of your own shadows is a death sentence. Han Sung stares in awe at his father's absolute power. He realizes that darkness must always flow toward where it is densest. Realizing he has no choice, he focuses his entire mind, just as he has done before. The knights resume their movement, and one delivers a brutal direct blow to the Duke's head. The man's head rolls across the floor, leaving Han Sung frozen in absolute shock. Yet the Duke merely praises Han Sung for regaining control of the shadows, and then the impossible happens. His severed head begins to rejoin his body. Han Sung watches in shock as his father explains that he simply refuses to die, using magic to reshape reality itself by turning mere imagination into existence. And at its peak, he can distort the very laws of the world, much like when he erased the Purifier's explosion.
A crushing truth settles in. This was a duel Han Sung could never win. Soon after, the dawn breaks, quietly following the end of the barbarian invasions.
An imperial envoy arrives with a clear mission: to keep House Saxon under the Emperor's direct watch. The messenger declares that the Emperor is pleased with the family's loyalty and gives special mention to the Black Prince's growing reputation. As a reward, Han Sung is invited to join the Red Magic Tower's academy at the imperial capital. But this invitation to the capital is merely a way to keep a closer eye on the young master. Alan Saxon cannot hide his concern, sensing that
The situation is extremely
dangerous. Even so, Han Sung seems willing to walk straight into what could be a trap. He notes that the son of Marquis Ulis will also
Be staying at the Black Magic Tower as part of the exchange in practice. Both families
will be keeping their heirs under watch to ensure neither side acts recklessly. The Duke remains worried, questioning if Han Sung has already forgotten the Purifier's attack, but Han Sung believes no one in the capital would dare touch the successor of the Black Duke. To the Empire, he is no longer just a threat, but a piece too valuable. For Marquis Ulis to simply discard, he believes the Red Tower was merely testing his strength. After all, a real assassination would have been far more decisive. Driven by curiosity, Han Sung wants to see the Empire for himself. Believing it's only natural to respond after the Red Tower's provocations, Alan Saxon lowers his head, torn by the logic. Struggling with the boy's logic, knowing deep down he is right. With his hand over his heart, Han Sung vows to do everything for his father and for House Saxon. Meanwhile, at the Red Magic Tower, a new shadow stirs. A red-haired man gazes at the horizon, eager for the meeting to come. To him, youth is a stage where curiosity should always outweigh fear. He looks down at a lifeless blonde woman, noting how her red fluid was magnificent. He compares a quick death to a blooming petal, whereas an immortal existence is just a weed that never flowers. He mocks her lack of reflection as she rots away, seemingly indifferent to the waste of life. In a poetic tone, he claims a swift death is a blessing compared to the emptiness of eternal life. That emptiness is a void he seeks to fill. Looking to the sky, the man declares that Han Sung is the only one who can satisfy his craving. Later, Han Sung travels toward his destination in a carriage alongside Sifia and Bale. During the long journey, Han Sung grows restless, while Bale watches him with an ease that has vanished since she saw his true form. The memory remains etched in her mind, an image of an elf that defies all explanation. As the carriage nears the Red Magic Tower, armed soldiers stand ready to receive the young master of House Saxon. The group reaches the Imperial Academy, an institution attached to the Great Tower. Marquis Ulis, a red-haired man with a restrained smile, approaches to offer a bow and a warm welcome for the young master's arrival. While Han Sung offers his thanks, Ulis praises the boy for choosing the battlefield over academia, noting that stories of his valor are already spreading across the Empire. Yet Han Sung remains unmoved, hiding the truth of the man who once slaughtered the Black Crow Knights. Ulis continues to praise him, saying that every rumor about the Black Prince's power impressed him. But Han Sung's response is cold, dismissing the tales as mere exaggeration. Undeterred, Ulis insists that such talent is exactly what the Academy wants, offering a hand in greeting. But Han Sung simply ignores the gesture. He walks past the man without a word. He stops only to offer a respectful bow to the Emperor's people. The Marquis's attendants laugh at his impeccable manners, unaware of the tension beneath his composure. Beneath the surface, Han Sung is incredibly tense. He knows he must wait for the right moment for House Saxon's sake, so that when the time finally comes, he can force his enemy to kneel at his own game. Watching closely, Ulis finds the silent fury burning in the young man's eyes, absolutely fascinating. Meanwhile, the imposing magic tower rises once again on the horizon, where professors continue their lessons to eager students. Today's lesson covers fire and water attributes, elements that are natural opposites. But the students are whispering about something else. The Black Prince. They can't believe that at only 11 years old, Han Sung has already reached the 3rd cycle, earning him a spot in the most advanced class. Weeks have passed since his arrival, and graduation exams are drawing near. For most nobles, becoming a mage of the Crimson Tower is a guaranteed ticket to success within the Empire. Because of this prestige, the students haven't welcomed this outsider, but Han Sung knows the Marquis didn't send him here just to sit through boring lectures. Suddenly, a blonde boy named Leonard interrupts the professor with disrespectful ease. Claiming the class is boring, Leonard's suggestion makes the cautious professor apologize instantly. Leonard thinks that since there's an exchange between the Black and Red Towers, the Black Prince should participate in something much more interesting. In this academy, bloodlines and power rankings rule everything like a tiny kingdom. Watching this, Han Sung realizes the boy is likely the direct heir to Walter, the master of the Red Tower. Leonard keeps talking, praising Han Sung as the greatest genius in the Empire for his legendary feats at the Trial Tower. Leonard wants to witness that talent firsthand, but Han Sung only offers a faint, unimpressed smile. Demanding real action over pretty words, Leonard forces Han Sung into a challenge that leads them directly into a training room. The uneasy professor questions if this display is too excessive for a high-level Imperial Academy class. However, Han Sung remains composed, suggesting they use a life point collar to prevent fatal accidents. He warns that without protection, fighting could easily lead to death, noting that magic is often used with the intent to kill. The chilling words leave the professor visibly on edge, causing him to desperately attempt to cancel the duel or insist on using the safety collar. Instead, Leonard grabs the professor by the collar. Insulting the boy, Leonard shoves the man aside and prepares to prove his superiority. Han Sung tells him to shut up and just watch, taunting his opponent to finally make a move. Leonard raises the stakes, proposing a deal. If Han Sung loses, he's expelled from the class and removed from graduation. In exchange, Leonard will forfeit his right to take the final exam. Han Sung doesn't hesitate to accept, already channeling his shadow swords. With a confident smile, he accepts the challenge. Leonard responds by building up a massive stream of fire, the flames moving like a living serpent as both combatants charge. The duel is intense from the very first moment. The duel erupts instantly, with the clashing magics triggering explosions around the arena. The students watch in shock, struggling to even track the sheer speed of the attacks. Han Sung's eyes go wide as he realizes his opponent is no ordinary fighter. He strikes desperately against the incoming fire stream. Leonard pulls back with startling speed, leaving Han Sung to raise his sword to finish the fight. Something unexpected occurs. An explosion erupts near his face, catching Han Sung in the blast and setting his clothes on fire. Confused by the sudden strike, Han Sung looks around and realizes a fellow student has interfered. He demands to know if this is a fair exchange, but the blonde boy only laughs, feigning innocence. The tension in the arena thickens. Leonard claims no one is acting as an ally. Rather, everyone is simply bothered by Han Sung's presence. He follows this with a threatening glare toward the professor. The professor is warned not to report the interference, lest Leonard's father puts the teacher's position on the line. Leonard turns back to Han Sung, eager to prove who holds the true talent in this duel. Instead of striking back, Han Sung lowers his arms and suggests they end this now, so it can be treated as a mere mistake. Leonard isn't having it, forcing Han Sung to gesture for him to look at their surroundings. Suddenly, the arena vanishes, replaced by a dark forest under the night sky. As the students realize their mana has completely vanished, Han Sung's sarcastic smile begins to grow. He mocks the helpless crowd, taunting the fire mage for letting his flames die so effortlessly. With total confidence, Han Sung declares that this domain now belongs to him. In this dark void, Leonard can barely conjure a single flame. He lashes out with bursts of dark energy, treating the students like nothing more than a nuisance. That energy erupts into shadowy tentacles that wrap around everyone's necks, lifting the students into the air. Han Sung declares that the farce is over. The professor shrieks in desperation, begging for Leonard's life. The shadow tightens slightly around the man's throat as he pleads for mercy, promising to justify everything. Shouts in a desperate plea, begging for Leonard's life, and offering any excuse to stop the violence. Next time, Leonard had better be ready to risk his own life. Later, under a moonlit sky, the festive sounds of the streets are drowned out by a much darker scene. The professor can only endure the beating. Leonard attacks him with pure rage, lashing out with kicks and punches. He is incensed that the man dared to interfere with House Walter's reputation, tarnishing his pride. The professor throws himself at Han Sung's feet, begging for forgiveness, but Leonard only responds with more violence, calling him useless. Bystanders laugh at the chaos as a humiliated Leonard orders the crowd to leave and sends the professor away with pure hatred. As the others help the beaten man to his feet and escort him out, a nearby woman whispers that without the prestige of House Walter, Leonard is nothing but a hot-headed failure. Even as blood drips from his palm, his rage burns hotter than the pain. He is not alone in the silence. Leonard snaps at the intruder, only to be met by a red-haired man who mocks his pathetic display of weakness. The Crimson Lord has recognized him, leaving the young man visibly unsettled and questioning his purpose here. The red-haired man remains unimpressed, stating the day was far from satisfying. Leonard lowers his head, asking if the Lord has only come to mock him, but the man replies that he came because he still sees some potential in the boy. He offers a mysterious object embedded with a red stone, promising it could erase Leonard's humiliation, provided he is willing to pay the price. Confused by this sudden gift, Leonard listens as the Crimson Lord warns that an unprepared soul will be consumed by the artifact's flames before ever tasting its power. It is a terrifying ultimatum. This object will either be Leonard's greatest opportunity or the spark that accelerates his downfall. The choice is his. As he stares at the stone, Leonard can only recall how this was meant to be the beginning of his rise, reaching the peak. Meanwhile, in a quiet dormitory, Han Sung focuses on shaping his aura in the stillness of the night. He knows he was brought here for much more than just academy students. Han Sung realizes Euless brought him here for a purpose far bigger than dealing with those local brats. Suddenly, a sharp knock interrupts his thoughts. The sound of the knock is familiar, prompting Han Sung to rush to the door without delay. Once she is inside, an awkward silence settles between them. Seeking to break the tension, Han Sung thanks her for her guidance on the trip to the capital. While discussing his academy classes, Han Sung Reborn as Han Sung can't help but blush when Sephia praises his progress. The elf master of water magic looks at him with regret, apologizing for the day she saw his face twisted by the loss of his knights. Han Sung insists that she was always his protector and that the failure belongs to him alone, but Sephia simply shakes her head. With a soft smile, she reminds him of her promise to stay by his side. But her commitment goes deeper than protection. She pulls him into a tight embrace, admitting that while she doesn't understand the emptiness in his eyes, it doesn't matter as long as she is there. Sephia vows to stand by him no matter what. Han Sung returns her embrace and thanks her for her warmth. Days later, the tension shifts to the Red Magic Tower, where Han Sung prepares for a duel against Valhor as the graduation exam looms. The peaceful atmosphere is shattered when Leonard enters with heavy irritation, ignoring the professor's warning that his disruptive behavior will no longer be tolerated. With pure contempt, Leonard scoffs at the staff and begins channeling his fire current, declaring he has come to end things once and for all. He demands a duel to prove he is the greatest talent in the Empire, and the room erupts in explosions. Leonard charges forward without restraint, attacking with pure aggression. He whips a blazing fire chain through the air, raining down destruction. Even under that intense pressure, his opponent manages to dodge every single attack. The blonde taunts him, asking where all that arrogance went, since the other has done nothing but run. Leonard declares he is finally mastering his power, allowing him to push his magic circle past its natural limits. The ruby crystal bracelet drives this mana overload, but Leonard's body was never meant to handle such strain. If he loses control, his own energy will consume him, but still vows to make his opponent suffer for daring to claim the title of the best. The fire chain slams down, but the young man blocks the strike with his sword, amidst explosions that terrify the students. Panic erupts as the teacher orders an immediate evacuation. The duel continues at full intensity, leaving Han Sung with a fresh wound across his face. Leonard taunts his rival, frustrated that Han Sung only runs instead of unleashing his true power. Deal with him tightening his grip on his sword for the final strike. Han Sung delivers a precise strike, severing the fire chain in two and leaving Leonard's weapon in ruins. Leonard watches in shock as his weapon is destroyed, and Han Sung offers him a way out. He warns that the artifact's pain will eventually destroy Leonard's body, leaving him no way to return. Irritated by the mercy, Leonard shouts that he will make Han Sung feel his true capability. Even as he fails, Leonard Walter clings to the delusion that he is the Empire's greatest genius. Madness takes hold as his flames erupt, a sea of fire claiming his fourth circle as a private world where only his opponent shall perish. But the artifact forces his mental world into reality, and the projection is a distorted, unstable mess, a reflection of a mind collapsing under its own weight. The fire reveals his hidden truth, the stinging memories of a father who deemed his achievements insufficient for the Walter name. Instead of raw power, this world bleeds pure despair, proving he is nothing more than a lost boy. Watching this, Han Sung decides to respond with cold composure. He is spiraling. Dark energy builds around Han Sung as he questions if Leonard can survive the sheer weight of the rage and emptiness he has swallowed. Without hesitation, Han Sung unleashes a terrifying surge of darkness toward the blonde boy, causing Leonard's anger to vanish. In its place comes pure despair as the agonizing memories of Han Sung's past life flash before Leonard's eyes. The visions are so heavy, they crush him, dropping the boy to the floor, paralyzed by the trauma. Han Sung steps closer to the broken boy, mockingly asking if this wasn't the price to pay for such talent. In a sinister voice, he demands to know if Leonard is willing to pay it. Later, after a hollow apology from the boy, a shaken teacher arrives. At that exact moment, a shaken teacher arrives on the scene. the sight of Leonard on his knees, looking completely lost. Han Sung instructs them to take the boy to the hospital, leaving Leonard Walter a hollow shell, sunk into a void he can never climb out of. And with that, the chaos at the academy comes to an end. Leonard's departure leaves a void, fueling rumors that the boy has simply lost his mind. Meanwhile, a storm brews in another land. A powerful man clenches his fist, demanding to know how his bloodline could suffer such a disgrace. This fury belongs to the Count of House Walter, an elder of the Sixth Circle Magic Tower. An intruder named Iulis approaches, his tone measured as he acknowledges the Count's humiliation and the hostility the Count has shown toward the eldest son of House Saxon. Walter frantically denies any ill intent toward the boy, pleading for no misunderstanding, but Iulis only claims he wishes to help the Count secure his revenge, holding an artifact that promises vengeance. Back at the Red Tower Academy, the sky is already clear. While Han Sung reflects on how much weaker Leonard was than expected, he wonders if the vengeful Iulis will stay idle. Suddenly, the classroom door opens. Han Sung's eyes widen as the redhead himself enters, announcing he will take the teacher's place. Han Sung begins to calculate the true danger of this unexpected guest. Iulis begins a lecture on the Academy's history, noting how Leonard Walter's massive reputation intimidated everyone. Despite him having no actual talent, the newcomer Iulis dismisses the rumors of the blonde's downfall and declares that students must learn to carry themselves better under his guidance. Without wasting time, he pivots straight to his true subject, but the lecture shifts focus from combat to something much more grim. Han Sung listens with wide eyes as Iulis explains how the Empire's unification war was actually fueled by widespread death in the name of justice. During that era, the Black and Red Towers formed an unofficial secret partnership known as Executor PV. The name strikes a chord in Han Sung's mind, forcing him to wonder why such a dark, buried history is being revealed now. Iulis's tone turns cold as he reveals the truth behind the unit's rhetoric of justice. They were nothing more than butchers performing horrific experiments on prisoners of war. To these mages, human lives were merely clay to be mutilated and rebuilt, for ethics and morality were nothing more than dispensable luxuries. As the classroom descends into shock, Iulis looks on with disappointment, warning that a true mage of the Red Tower should never be shaken by such simple moral questions. Instead, they should feel pride, but the tension in the room is palpable. Iulis turns his gaze toward Han Sung, sensing the boy's unease as he asks if he would choose morality over reason. He reveals that even the great Alan Saxon once chose morality, abandoning his pursuit of truth. Han Sung is well aware of that history, knowing how the Empire tried to erase the unit's legacy after the war. But now, Iulis sees a different kind of potential, a true power that could make the boy something far beyond human. He claims that one day, Han Sung will reach the summit of the Black Tower. As he extends a hand, Iulis makes a chilling proposal. He asks if Han Sung. Iulis proposes an alliance between the Black and Red Towers, seeking a partnership that would allow him to use Han Sung's talent to revive the Executor. Han Sung stands his ground, insisting they cannot make such monumental decisions without his father's authority. With that single gesture, the reality around them fractures. The room vanishes, replaced by a dark, strange void where it feels as though snow is falling through the emptiness. But looking closer, the illusion breaks. They aren't snowflakes, but drifting ashes that spark a flood of long-buried memories. Within this void, Iulis approaches, asking if Han Sung doesn't find this world magnificent. He explains that only Han Sung can see this realm, while others see nothing. He describes it with pride, showing visions of massive steel towers. He speaks of iron-black dragons crossing skies and breathing impossible flames. Suddenly, something streaks across the void. A flying machine appears, launching a missile directly at them. A colossal explosion swallows everything. Yet Iulis watches with pure pleasure, asking Han Sung to witness this empire of fire and steel. To him, this carnage represents the true pinnacle that mages desperately strive to reach. In response, Han Sung asks if Iulis tried to summon a hero from another world just to find this truth. Iulis replies that the man was almost right. The man argues that summoned heroes serve as soldiers, yet lack true power. The boy laughs, realizing the man is ignorant, that power has already been inherited by him. Iulis's gaze fixes on Han Sung as he states, that focus reveals the truth. Han Sung is the very reason he was brought here. Han Sung questions if a new alliance between the Black and Red factions is the key to reaching such power. Iulis confirms without hesitation, telling the boy he has all the time he needs. To a man like him, time is insignificant. As he prepares to leave, he adds
that the head of House Walter
is resentful of his son's humiliation. Furthermore, Walter was a leader of the old Executor, and the Emperor prefers that the secrets of that unit remain hidden. Iulis makes it clear that this is merely a negotiation. Han Sung could refuse and face House Walter, but if he chooses to eliminate the problem, Yuli's promises a fitting reward. With an enigmatic smile, the lesson comes to an end. With a single snap of Ulyss's fingers, the world begins to dissolve. Returning the two to the classroom as if nothing happened, Ulyss leaves, promising that Han Sung's true worth will soon be revealed. Later that night, Han Sung trains alone at the Black Duke's estate, desperately refining his aura. On the outskirts of the imperial capital, the quiet night is suddenly shattered. The terrifying vision of a burning city haunts his thoughts, forcing him to realize that Ulyss was actually issuing a warning. If he refuses the old man's terms, he might be next, but Han Sung is determined to never be a pawn again. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocks the residence, smashing through the roof and shattering his concentration. Han Sung grabs his cloak as Sifia rushes to his side, calling out in terror. Then, a shadow emerges from the debris. It is Walter, appearing through the smoke to confront the boy he believes has ruined his son's life. With a freezing gaze, Walter demands an explanation for the ruin Han Sung has brought upon his family, making it crystal clear that Han Sung must now face the consequences.